Chapter 34-24. What is this? The devouring dragon servant stopped once again. In that short moment, he had stopped many times already. Every time he tried to kill Long Chen, he failed. This time, he was even stranger. When he was shocked and stopped, Long Chen flung Lingxi's jade stone away, completely out of range of the battle. To a place where there were only flames, away from the battlefield, Lingxi could slowly recover and not be disturbed here. At this critical juncture, the comet-like beam of light smashed into the Doomsday God's body. Like a sharp needle, it pierced into the Doomsday God's body. After piercing into it, it actually tore apart the Doomsday God's body. Furthermore, it did not bounce back out. Rumble. Doomsday cried out in pain, his body contorting. What is this? We are the sacred ones. The devouring dragon servant transformed back into human form. This time he was truly shocked. He stared at Doomsday, forgetting to move. He stood there, stupefied. Long Chen's appearance today was one of his surprises. The second was that Long Chen had cut one of Yangxi's eyes. The third was the appearance of the Sky-Devouring clan. He did not know that there was such a powerful Sky-Devouring clan in the world. Impossible. The shock came too suddenly. He was still in a daze. That is a sacred ones that devours all flames. The devouring dragon servant was even more excited. This was not an ordinary sacred ones. How did he appear? At this point, he still hadn't moved. It was already too late. Rumble. The beam of fire had penetrated the Doomsday God's body and reached its core. If it was a forceful attack, even the devouring dragon servants would not be able to do it. In fact, only the Sky-Devouring clan would be able to do it. Flame-Devouring Beast. The devouring dragon servant recalled this name. But at this time, the flaming beast finally revealed itself in the space inside the Doomsday's body. It was a pure black demon wolf, covered in flames. On top of the original 7 types of ancestral flames, there was also the primeval sacrificial flame. The primordial sacrificial fire had 3 parts. At this time, 3 flames appeared on the sun-devouring demon wolf's forehead. They were 3 flame-like marks. One was a 9-colored flame, one was a black star-like flame, and one was a spatial flame. This was the primeval sacrificial flame. Big brother, I succeeded. Try to break the curse. This is your last chance. Long Chen had been waiting for this moment for a long time. In fact, he had been communicating with Mo Xiaolang all the time. Mo Xiaolang had just swallowed the primeval sacrificial flame, so he was coming here as fast as he could. Finally, he had arrived. From the very beginning, this was all within Long Chen's plan. The only miscalculation was that the devouring dragon servant was too strong and had subdued him in an instant. Fortunately, Lingxi had resolved the crisis for him and bought him some time. When he saw the Doomsday, Long Chen had the idea of letting Mo Xiaolang tear it apart and charge in. Now that Mo Xiaolang had finally arrived and successfully entered, he acted at Long Chen's suggestion. Whoosh! Although it was said to be 7 kinds of ancestral flames, it was actually 10 kinds of ancestral flames. The 10 ancestral flames condensed into a huge fireball. At the critical moment, it directly collided with the origin dragon soul that was nailed by 1 billion black iron needles. Rumble. The 1 billion black nails had locked the origin dragon soul in one area. Therefore, Mo Xiaolang's attack did not destroy the origin dragon soul. Instead, it was all used on the curse. In fact, the entire Doomsday Beast was made up of the 1 billion black nails, the origin dragon soul of the ancient blood spiritual dragon, and a third thing. This third thing was the primeval sacrificial fire. After so many hardships, this moment had finally arrived. The Doomsday Beast had lost the origin dragon soul. The awakened origin dragon soul was about to break through the Doomsday Beast's divine body and fly toward Long Chen. No! This was the devouring dragon servant's most heart-wrenching voice. From the moment he had been so proud of himself to this moment, it was as if he had fallen from heaven to hell. It was as if everything had collapsed in front of him. The destruction of the Doomsday Beast was a huge loss to him. Even if the ancestral gods were still under his control, the problem was that he did not have the Doomsday Beast. Without the Doomsday Beast, he could not transfer the world's origin energy. The sacred lords could not devour it perfectly. How much would he waste? Damn. As the devouring dragon servant advanced, he turned into a huge worm and opened his bloody mouth. He could not forgive Mo Xiaolang, and he could not let Long Chen obtain the Origin Dragon Soul. As long as the Origin Dragon Soul existed, the Doomsday Beast could still be born. It was the most critical moment. Roar! At this moment, a gigantic flaming beast dashed out from the body of the Doomsday God. It was a black demonic wolf with 10 types of blazing flames surrounding it. The flames on its body were even more terrifying than the entire Doomsday God. The demonic wolf and the meat worm clashed in the flames of the Doomsday Beast. The Doomsday Beast still maintained its body and was not completely destroyed. After all, it was created by the Sacred Lords. However, the Origin Dragon Soul and Mo Xiaolang had already rushed out. Rumble! Who are you? The devouring dragon servant roared at Mo Xiaolang. Mo Xiaolang's appearance was the key to the devouring dragon servant's plan. Long Chen had been waiting for this moment for too long. If he could really win this time, his patience would definitely be the key to victory. At this moment, Long Chen was about to go crazy. When Mo Xiaolang stopped the devouring dragon servant for him, he saw the Origin Dragon Soul. Even though he had lost his dragon blood and was heavily injured, he could not help but rush towards the Origin Dragon Soul. Countless years of waiting. Countless years of longing. Finally, at this final moment, with the help of his dearest brother and the person he loved the most, the moment he could truly transform into a mystical dragon had arrived. Long Chen had been waiting for this moment even in his dreams. Joy, excitement, all the words that could describe such emotions were insufficient to describe what he was feeling at this moment. He chose to trust Mo Xiaolang. This was his greatest success. Mo Xiaolang did not disappoint him. At this moment, his brother had given Long Chen a real gift. While Mo Xiaolang was fighting the devouring dragon servant without a word, Long Chen and the Origin Dragon Soul collided like cannonballs. Rumble! Amidst the shock, the flesh and soul reunited. Amidst the shock, the true primordial spiritual blood dragon was born. The flesh and the Origin Dragon Soul revolved around a center. That center was the origin of the world. Slaughter. Buzz. It was an unimaginable moment. Big brother. Seeing this, Mo Xiaolang finally smiled. He felt that Long Chen's current mood was no less than when he had transformed into a dragon in the Sword Spirit Emperor Palace. In fact, it was even more intense. Because today was the final battle. The turning point of everything began at this moment. QQ Demon Star. One of his arms was holding the World Origin Massacre. At this moment, the slaughter had truly merged with it. 1/10 of Long Chen had entered the slaughter. It was as if the slaughter had become part of his body. As long as the slaughter existed, his body could exist endlessly. My ancestral god is still different from the creator ancestral gods. Besides the world origin, I still have a large portion of the ancestral soul in my body. This means that my body can't be like the other ancestral gods, which can be completely destroyed and restored. Perhaps I can restore the part of the primordial blood spirit dragon, but the other parts that haven't obtained the Origin Dragon Soul can't appear again. If those parts died, they would truly die. This was a disadvantage for Long Chen, but it didn't matter. The other ancestral dragons and the Jade Dragon Seal definitely have deeper secrets. I have this opportunity. Once I get the other Origin Dragon Souls, I will know. At this moment, the fusion was truly successful. The ancestral dragon was born. In this chaotic moment, the ancestral gods were all frozen by the icy blue curse. Yangshi was still recovering her eyes, Lingxi was still recovering her curse, and Mo Xiaolang was fighting the devouring dragon servant after devouring the primordial sacrificial fire. After devouring the doomsday sacred fire and the primordial sacrificial fire, Mo Xiaolang was equivalent to the 8th era's ancestral god. Among all the ancestral gods, he wasn't too strong. Against the devouring dragon servant, he could barely hold on. Fortunately, Long Chen succeeded in the right sequence. Everything was going according to plan. The process was so smooth that the dragon servants didn't expect it to be. Rumble. Long Chen's birth and return had completely severed the devouring dragon servant's last hope. To the devouring dragon servant, this was like a bolt from the blue. It was an unbelievable blow. After letting out a cry of pain, his divine body expanded again, turning into a huge flesh worm, and ferociously bit towards Long Chen. Die! The devouring dragon servant also went crazy. However, Long Chen did not clash head-on with him. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen retreated a large distance, but in an instant, the World Origin Slaughter returned. The World Origin Slaughter had already condensed a new World Origin rule. You asked me if I only knew one World Origin rule. Now, I will tell you the answer. Long Chen's voice reverberated around the devouring dragon's servant like thunder. This huge flesh worm was roaring at the sky, rolling its huge divine body from afar, and colliding with Long Chen. Long Chen did not say anything more, and only had murderous intent. In his hands, the World Origin Slaughter gradually turned into nothingness, as though it had entered another world. However, the terrifying feeling of death was unprecedentedly strong. This World Origin rule had nothing to do with blood. It was the purest World Origin rule of slaughter, and of course it was only used to kill the opponent. Soul-killing sword. Swoosh. The sword slashed down. The invisible sword shadow swept out with the light of World Origin Slaughter, passing through the endless sea of fire, and instantly rushed into the devouring dragon servant's body. Chapter 34-26. The soul-killing sword was the counterpart of the blood-wheel sword, but it was a move that could destroy the opponent's ancestral soul. The soul-killing sword was the ancient blood-spirit dragon's nomological law. Long Chen had naturally comprehended it when he became an ancient blood-spirit dragon. The ancient blood-spirit dragon was a bloodthirsty and murderous dragon. If the blood-wheel sword was bloodthirsty, then the soul-killing sword was murderous. Frankly speaking, the soul-killing sword was much more lethal than the blood-wheel sword. Long Chen could tear apart the devouring dragon servant's body with the blood-wheel sword. The effect of the stronger soul-killing sword was what Long Chen was looking forward to. Before this, Long Chen had pondered the ancient blood-spirit dragon's nomological law that could directly kill a primordial spirit, but it was definitely not as good as the soul-killing sword. This sword had practically fused the part of Long Chen's murderous ancestral soul into the nomological law of destruction. The blood-wheel sword was dragon blood. The soul-killing sword was the ancestral soul. This was a crazy way to kill 1,000 enemies, but it was also because of this that it had such a terrifying effect. Rip. When the soul-killing sword pierced through the devouring dragon servant's body, although it did not seem to cause any damage, it was destructive to the devouring dragon servant. The sky devourers had souls too, and at this moment, Long Chen used his own ancestral soul to form the sharpest weapon. It pierced through the devouring dragon servant's soul in an instant. Roar! The devouring dragon servant let out an earth-shattering shriek. His flesh and blood were trembling. Although he had no eyes, it was clear that he had already broken down in Long Chen's soul-killing sword. His soul was torn apart. With 2 primordial blood spiritual dragon rules in a row, Long Chen had crushed his most hated enemy, the devouring dragon attendant, to the brink of death. Although letting him die a quick death was considered letting him off easy, he was still a dangerous person. The only thing Long Chen wanted to do now was to kill him and get rid of any future troubles. Chen, don't let him have a chance to live. Let him be reduced to ashes forever. The dragon attendants were extremely excited. They even clenched their fists tightly, waiting for this moment. The desire of the dragon attendants was the hottest thing in Long Chen's heart. In order to become the ancestral dragon, he had thought about it day and night. In order to kill the devouring dragon attendants and avenge his father, he had endured until today. 2 devastating blows from the true ancient blood spirit dragon had almost caused him to collapse. With his soul wounded, he was deeply aware of the impending doom. Long Chen, don't be like this. If you change your mind, I can still free you. I can give you a brighter future and let you join us. Don't kill me. The devouring dragon servant seemed to have made an important decision. Tell me, who would let the person who killed their father continue to live? Long Chen's cold words reverberated in his ears, dealing a heavy blow to the devouring dragon servant's chaotic soul. What do you mean by father's murderer? The devouring dragon servant was dumbfounded for a moment. Perhaps he couldn't remember how insignificant that had been to him in the past. However, at this moment, Long Chen's eyes shone with a boundless killing light. In his eyes, there was only heat and ruthlessness. The massacre in his hand had become a brush. Long Chen held the brush with one hand and waved it in the void, drawing randomly. In an instant, the sea of fire formed a storm. The most terrifying massacre, which surpassed everything, descended once again. This nomological law was much more complicated than the preparation of the blood-wheel sword and the soul-killing sword. The soul-slaying sword was the soul-devouring sword. Blood-wheel sword. However, the person who was even crazier was still Long Chen. Even though the devouring dragon attendant was already suffering in the life-seizing dragon diagram and was already dying in pain, with no chance of turning things around, Long Chen still felt that it was too slow. His massacre crazily pierced the devouring dragon servant's body. That stance was even more deadly than the life-seizing dragon diagram. However, countless sword shadows swept past. Under the pressure of the life-seizing dragon diagram, the devouring dragon servant only managed to hold on for a short period of time. Under Long Chen's slaughter, the devouring dragon servant was completely devoured by the sacred fire of doomsday. In fact, he seemed to have many things to say, but Long Chen did not give him the chance to do so. From the time Long Chen succeeded in becoming the ancestral dragon to the painful death of the devouring dragon servant, only a short period of time had passed. Even Long Chen himself did not expect to be able to kill the devouring dragon servant. He had simply accumulated too much hatred and anger, and after gaining strength, he vented it all on the devouring dragon servant. Bang! The last sword came, and within the flames, the devouring dragon servant disappeared completely. Perhaps even the 6 dragon servants who rushed over could not believe such a scene. They cried as they watched. Like Long Chen, they had waited too long for this day. They had once dreamed of finding the origin dragon soul for Long Chen, and now they had found it. They had once dreamed of killing the traitor, the devouring dragon servant, and now they had done it. It was like a dream. It was hard to believe that this was reality. But when he realized that the devouring dragon servant had disappeared, even he was stunned. He had killed too crazily. He did not expect the devouring dragon servant to be so weak. Before he could say anything, it was gone. Destroyed in Long Chen's storm. He could only cry speechlessly. He looked down. When Long Chen fought against the devouring dragon servant, from the first bloodwheel sword, Mo Xiaolang knew that there would be no problem. He left the battlefield and chased the remaining body of the Doomsday Beast, and started to fight it. Because it had lost the origin dragon soul, the Doomsday Beast was like a thing that had lost its core. Very quickly, it was turned into pure flames by Mo Xiaolang, and bit it bit by bit. With the destruction of the Doomsday Beast, the entire Doomsday Flame world started to shrink and collapse. The rules that controlled Long Chen and the others were also losing their effectiveness. Only the creator gods within the icy blue curse were staring at the scene with wide eyes, not moving a muscle. Also, Yang Shi from the Sky Swallowing clan was still recovering his eyes. The devouring dragon servant was destroyed too quickly, and he did not have time to react. At this moment, Long Chen, who was holding the massacre sword, had already attacked. Unfortunately, Yang Shi could not see Long Chen. He had lost the devouring dragon servant, and he did not even know what was going on. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen was in front of him. He saw Yang Shi's second undamaged eye, and the icy blue curse was flashing. It's over. Long Chen pulled out the bloodwheel sword and took a deep breath. With a roar, he stabbed the massacre sword on it. The massacre sword pierced through the eye and broke the curse like the first time. This time it made Yang Shi blind. The Sky Swallowing clan let out another earth-shattering cry of pain, rolling in the endless doomsday flame. Ding ding ding. At this moment, Long Chen heard the sound of ice breaking. He looked back and saw that the ice on the remaining ancestor gods were breaking. The ancestor gods had finally regained their freedom. Looking closely, one could see that the remaining half of the curse on the source of their world was completely broken. The curse had completely disappeared and left them. This probably meant that the creator gods were completely out of the Sky Swallowing clan's control. They were free. With a final crisp sound, the last ancestor god was freed from the curse. Perhaps they could see everything clearly within the icy blue curse. Hence, at this moment, their gazes were all on Long Chen. Gentle, grateful, admiring. It was this kind of gaze. Everyone, we can take revenge now. What are you waiting for? Since they could see, it was even better. There was no need to tell them what had happened. He just did not know if their memories from before the era still existed. Long Chen meant Yang Shi. The Sky Swallowing clan was not dead yet. To be honest, if not for the fact that she could not detect his presence, and the dragon jade seal was protecting him, he would not have been able to suppress Yang Shi. To truly destroy the Sky Swallowing clan, he still had to rely on the ancestor gods. The devouring dragon servant had been killed, the Doomsday Beast had disappeared, and only Yang Shi was left screaming. After Long Chen said this, the ancestor gods realized that there was still an enemy. Previously, it was Long Chen who saved everything. The only way to vent their anger, they naturally would not hesitate. At this moment, they swarmed over and surrounded Xueqi. Chapter 34:27. After the curse was broken, the ancestor gods who could not see the sky-swallowing clan were finally freed, and Xueqi appeared in their vision. As expected, it was because of the curse that they could not sense the sky-swallowing clan, and were concealed by the sky-swallowing clan. But now, the devouring dragon servants were extinct, and the entire apocalyptic world was collapsing. The sky-swallowing clan's preparations for an epoch were all destroyed, and only Xueqi, who had lost her eyes, was left in the chaos. The ancestor gods did not recover their memories from before the epoch. But they knew who they were, and now that the curse was broken, they saw the entire battle from start to finish. Moreover, they knew their hatred towards the sky-swallowing clan. In the most crucial battle, they did not help at all, and only Xueqi was left. At this time, the fourth-era ancestor gods led the charge, and without a word, they started a destructive attack on Xueqi. Xueqi was not of sacred lord. Her actual strength was roughly equivalent to the fourth era's ancestral god, far surpassing the devouring dragon attendants. The reason why Long Chen could suppress Xueqi and destroy her eyes was all because of the mysterious dragon Jade. But with the fourth-era ancestor gods leading the charge, thousands of ancestor gods attacked at the same time, and laws of all sizes exploded, all landing on Xueqi's body. Roar! Xueqi's body was completely destroyed by the laws. Bang! A sky-swallowing clan was completely destroyed, and turned to dust. Xueqi was completely destroyed. As such, the curse on the ancestor gods could no longer be reborn. Although it was the chaos sky-swallowing dragon's curse, it seemed to have been transferred to Xueqi. Now that Xueqi was gone, the curse was naturally gone as well. We won. We did it. Even though calamity had been destroyed, none of the elder gods could believe such a great surprise. Although almost every single elder god was on the verge of the collapse of their world's prime essences, and they were all heavily injured, with one foot in the grave of death, the joy of total victory had washed away all of that. There was only excitement left in their hearts. Even though they were ancestor gods, they were mortals among mortals. In the midst of victory, they laughed happily, as though a burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Long Chen also felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He found Lingxi. At this time, Lingxi was still in the state of jade, but she was already recovering. Even though she was a jade, she still had the feeling of flesh and blood. If not for her everlasting guardian curse, Long Chen would already be dead, and the elder gods would be in a similar state. After the war, the ancestral gods couldn't forget Long Chen the most. He was the one who turned the tide and saved everything. Of course, Lingxi and Mo Xiaolong's help was also Long Chen's team. Before this, they had never thought that he could create such a miracle in such a war. Right now, everyone was looking at each other. From their eyes, Long Chen could see a hint of heroism. Even the primal chaos ancestor god and the others had the same attitude. Rumble. At this time, Mo Xiaolong completely tore the Doomsday Beast apart. The entire beast exploded and scattered throughout the Doomsday world. Because of the beast's transformation, the entire Doomsday world was undergoing a drastic change. In short, it was a complete collapse. A complete collapse. The entire Doomsday world was formed from the primordial sacrificial fire and the origin dragon soul. Another important part was a large amount of spirit qi, and even the power extracted from the ancestor gods. The primordial sacrificial fire had changed this power into the form of the Doomsday fire, forming this huge Doomsday world. Now that the Doomsday fire had collapsed and the primordial sacrificial fire had been devoured, everything was returning to its original form. The endless Doomsday God fire, in its original form, was actually the power of the creator gods that had been devoured in the past. In this war, many creator gods had died here, becoming a part of this power. At this time to Long Chen, it was like countless samsara fruits had been crushed and turned into smoke, condensing into such a huge space. All the surrounding flames had returned to their original form, becoming pure power. The power that once belonged to the ancestor gods. In the face of so much pure power, it was like being surrounded by countless samsara fruits. The ancestor gods were not fools, and in an instant, everyone began to absorb the endless power. Even the jade-like Lingxi could do it, absorbing the endless power around her to change from her jade-like state. The restrictive rules have disappeared, And I can also open the divine kingdom, separating the realms of life and death. All of this was known to Xueqi, Kitten, and the others. But this time, their greatest regret was that they had not been able to participate in this most crucial battle. They had let Long Chen and the others fight on the edge of life and death. Long Chen. After opening the realm of death, Xueqi threw herself on him, and her tears quickly fell on Long Chen's clothes. It was hard to imagine how she had felt when she told Long Chen that so many worlds had been destroyed. She had endured the torture, and now that it was finally gone, Long Chen hugged her delicate body, feeling deeply sorry for her. Don't waste this power for now. He had let them out at this time so that they could absorb the things left behind by the apocalypse together with the ancestor gods. Long Chen did not absorb it himself. Instead, he opened the divine kingdom to its greatest extent, and poured the endless power in the surroundings into the divine kingdom. Of course, even so, the rate at which he absorbed it was far inferior to the 4th and 5th era ancestor gods. At most, it was equivalent to the 6th era ancestor god. The ancestor gods are fighting too hard. Xueqi had already fully recovered, and she was also absorbing the power to strengthen herself. Of course, she was a 9th era ancestor god, so the amount she absorbed was negligible. Most of the power was divided between the dozen 4th era ancestor gods and the 105th era ancestor gods. Mo Xiaolang, Kitten, Xueqi, and the others were all strengthened by this power. Kitten was especially effective, and he was about to form a second world of Genesis. However, in a very short time, the power left behind by the apocalypse was all snatched away. In order to completely recover, the ancestor gods were vying with each other. When the flames and power of the apocalypse disappeared, what reappeared was the starry sky. The apocalypse and everything within it was now gone. What remained were the ancestor gods and Long Chen and the others. As far as the eye could see, the bodies of the creator gods were all glowing with light. Even the weakest of the 9th era elder gods, roughly 700 of them, had recovered to their peak state because of the samsara fruit. But now, all of the remaining 9th era elder gods had their world Genesis restored to its peak state. It wasn't just them. All of the ancestor gods had recovered to their peak state. For example, the 4th era's ancestor god, primordial ancestor god, and the others looked much more complete than when they had first ascended. Even the 8th era's ancestor god, like sacred ancestor Dark Knight, had recovered to his peak state. They were much more difficult to deal with than before. In short, under the power of the apocalypse, all of the ancestor gods had recovered to their peak state. They had survived and became the biggest beneficiaries. Xueqi, Mo Xiaolang, and the others had all made corresponding progress. Kitten was about to condense the second world of Genesis, while Mo Xiaolang's power was equivalent to the 8th era ancestor god in his peak state. With so many ancestral fires, his combat power was even stronger. As for Long Chen, he didn't improve because of this feast, but he had brought the most terrifying rebirth to the dragon sacrificial continent. In a short time, he had injected the power equivalent to hundreds of sacred fruits of samsara into the god nation. Originally, when Long Chen reached the ancestor realm, the dragon sacrificial continent had expanded again. Previously it was at the origin level, but now it had expanded by 10 times. The form of the primeval dragon sacrificial ceremony was even more obvious. Its world level had once again become one of the 10,000 worlds, surpassing all the original level worlds. The current original level world was roughly equivalent to the strength of the 6th era world before the 10,000 worlds. As for the dragon sacrificial continent, it had successfully given birth to the strength equivalent to the 5th era ancestor god. In terms of its current grade, it was already at the 10th grade. Moreover, with a large amount of spiritual qi being infused into them, all of the mystical dragon tribe received a huge supply of spiritual qi, and they grew rapidly. Among them, Dragon Yen and Dragon Qilin both received great benefits, and they grew up quite a bit. They were already a pair of youths. They were roughly equivalent to a mortal 11 or 12 years old. The supreme divine dragons broke through their limits one by one and reached the half-ancestor realm. For example, Yang Lingqing was the first to become a supreme divine dragon. At this time, she had reached the ultimate state of a supreme divine dragon, which was the peak of the half-ancestor realm. The 15 dragon emperors and the others were also in this realm, and they even had the possibility of reaching the ancestor realm. The changes in the dragon sacrificial continent were really too great. If not counting the ancestor gods, the current dragon sacrificial continent was impressively the #1 great world among the 10,000 worlds. Even Long Chen's god nation was somewhat unable to bear it. It seems that I need to let the dragon sacrificial continent truly return to the 10,000 worlds. Long Chen had already made this plan in his heart. If the ancestor gods had absorbed a little slower just now and allowed me to obtain a little more power, I could have made the dragon sacrificial continent even more perfect. Long Chen didn't care much about this competition. After all, no one would be so foolish when encountering so many benefits. Besides, this originally belonged to the ancestor gods. However, there was a fact that made Long Chen feel incredulous every time he thought about it. He asked Lingxi blankly, then asked everyone. In other words, the devouring dragon servant's plan has failed, the ancestor gods have all recovered, and the holy masters can't obtain the shattered power of the ancestor gods, so it's impossible for them to break the seal of the first ancestor dragon. From now on, the 10,000 worlds are completely safe, and our war is completely won. This was so hard to believe. Yes, big brother, we can rest easy now. Mo Xiaolang was also extremely excited. Everyone was smiling. Chapter 34-28. Volume 39, Genesis Era. Long Chen had always thought that he would run into the chaotic heaven-swallowing dragon and all the holy masters of the sky-swallowing race. That was the final enemy he had imagined. I never thought that the first ancestral dragon would use a peerless seal to imprison the sky-swallowing race, preventing them from awakening. Getting rid of the devouring dragon servants actually resolved the sky-swallowing race's crisis. Even though the apocalypse was gone, and he was surrounded by empty space, Long Chen still found it hard to believe. We didn't expect it either. If we had known from the start, many things would have been easily resolved. It wouldn't have been so troublesome, the Kama dragon servant said. It was them who had made Long Chen cautious time and time again. Only now did he know that this caution was not very useful. The most terrifying enemies were not easy to awaken. They had even used an epic's time to use the primordial sacrificial fire and the ancient blood spirit dragon's origin dragon soul to create the apocalypse to help them escape. No matter what, everything has come to an end for the time being. We can sit back and relax as we search for the remaining essence blood and origin dragon souls. Of course, there are other world essences as well. From the looks of it, the 10,000 worlds will definitely be peaceful and relaxed. To the dragon servants, the devouring dragon servants were the most unforgivable people. The death of the devouring dragon servants was their greatest joy. Now, they had all fallen into a state of revelry and relaxed. Even Li Xuanji, who was usually cold and aloof, was now crying tears of joy. Her heart was finally at ease, and even her face was flushed red, looking extremely charming and alluring. Overall, it was a joyous occasion. The only regret was that many ancestral gods had been destroyed in this battle. The worlds they had created, and all the gods and demons, had been completely destroyed. This was so painful. Long Chen did not dare to count how many had died. There was no point. After today, everything would vanish into thin air. It would be forgotten by history. There was no use remembering it. At this time, the ancestral gods did not seem to understand the future too well. Long Chen arrived before them. When they were controlled by the curse, they could see, but they could not hear. Seniors, I have an important piece of good news to share with all of you. Long Chen had finally become an ancestral dragon. The 10 great ancestral dragons could barely be counted as creator ancestral gods, so Long Chen was one of them. Although he had become an ancestral dragon, he still only had the origin of a world. There were many creator ancestral gods who were stronger than him. After all, the destruction of the Doomsday had allowed all of the creator gods to reach their peak state. All of the missing world origins had now been perfected. Tell me about it. The creator ancestral god surrounded Long Chen with the primordial ancestral god, primal ancestral god, and creation ancestral god as the core. In this battle, Long Chen was the hero. He was the one who saved all the ancestral gods. So at this time, they were very warm to Long Chen. Even the fourth era's primordial ancestral gods were smiling. Long Chen said in a clear voice, "I'll tell you the whole story. First, I obtained the inheritance of the primordial spiritual blood dragon, one of the 10 great ancestral dragons. This time, the sky-swallowing clan used the primordial spiritual blood dragon's origin dragon soul to create the apocalypse." Then, Long Chen explained the purpose of creating the Doomsday and the plan to break the seal. As for the origin dragon soul, everyone saw it. Because Mo Xiaolang tore the Doomsday beast apart, Long Chen fused with the origin dragon soul and defeated the devouring dragon servant. As for the beginning and the end, they basically understood everything. Now, they knew that the curse was completely gone. Long Chen's news made the ancestor gods even happier. Primordial War Ancestor asked, Long Chen, you mean that from now on, because the sky-devouring clan's holy masters can't break the first ancestral dragon's peerless seal, they will never appear in the myriad worlds again. They will be imprisoned forever. From today onwards, the myriad worlds will be at peace. We will enter a new era, just like before the era, right? Maybe, I guess. Long Chen answered like this, but he knew in his heart that this was different from before the epoch. Before the epoch, the dragon sacrificial continent was powerful, the world was powerful, and even the myriad realms were 10 times as powerful as they were now. But now, the myriad realms were still dried up because the holy masters of the sky-swallowing clan were still alive. However, the preparations of an era were destroyed by Long Chen. They basically had no chance of appearing again. This is great news. From now on, the myriad worlds will no longer have enemies and can develop steadily, said another fourth era's primordial ancestor god. As far as the eye could see, every ancestor god's face was brimming with joy. After the war, everyone was immersed in the joy of victory. Seeing that the ancestor gods were very harmonious and on good terms, Long Chen felt a lot more at ease. Father, today, I've finally fulfilled my wish. It's also your wish. It's a pity that you won't be able to see all of this. Although we've paid a great price in this war, we've gained eternal peace. The dragon sacrificial dragon continent has also grown to an unprecedented level. Our divine dragon race is even more glorious than 1,000 years ago. It's just that you won't be able to see it. Long Chen wanted his father to know so much, but it was impossible. He had already perished forever. He will definitely know. Tai Su God was beside Long Chen. Seeing the nostalgic look in Long Chen's eyes, she knew what Long Chen was thinking. The ancestor gods were discussing excitedly, but Long Chen was very calm. At this time, perhaps the ancestor gods were anxious to return to their own worlds. Now that the Sky Devourer race was gone, they instinctively wanted to build their own worlds. They had just recovered and needed to meditate. Farewell. After the celebration, the ancestor gods gradually dispersed and began to return. The feeling of being reborn after death was really exciting. Frankly speaking, after this thrilling battle, even though he had become an ancestor dragon, Long Chen was a little tired. Fortunately, his loved ones were still by his side. Seeing them, Long Chen felt relieved. At least the most important people to him were still unharmed. Big brother. Boss. Nothing could shake the feelings of this group of people. At this time, after being reborn, all of them hugged each other. Even the dragon attendants couldn't help but secretly wipe their tears when they saw this group. For this moment, they had fought with their lives on the line. When most of the ancestor gods had left, Long Chen smiled and said to everyone, "Come, let's go back together. Today is the day to let the dragon sacrificial continent return to the myriad worlds." The dragon sacrificial continent had probably grown too big and strong in the god nation, so Long Chen's god nation couldn't particularly bear it. Long Chen understood that in reality, it was time for the newly born dragon sacrificial continent to return to the myriad worlds. The dragon sacrificial continent originally belonged to the myriad worlds. Long Chen's god nation was a bit like the nurturing of the dragon sacrificial continent. Now that the dragon sacrificial continent had matured, it was time for it to be born and return to the myriad worlds. Moreover, it was already the highest level of the myriad worlds. All right. Everyone was in high spirits. The current dragon sacrificial continent was so big that more than 99% of it was uninhabited. Although the level of the world had increased, it was really not easy for the divine dragon race to reproduce that much for the time being. It required hundreds of millions of years of inheritance. After passing through the death rain, Long Chen and all his companions arrived at the former location of the dragon sacrificial continent. There was a smoky sphere left behind after the original dragon sacrificial continent's destruction. Not far away was the divine planet of destiny, and the divine dragon origin grounds. Standing here, everyone was looking forward to it. Long Chen also had a long-awaited expression on his face. This moment was really too rare for them. The girls' eyes were still brimming with tears, especially Lingxi and Li Xuanji. They were the closest to Long Chen and knew what kind of effort Long Chen had put in for the sake of the dragon sacrificial continent, for this moment. He went from being young to not being young. When the dragon sacrificial continent was destroyed and shattered, he was in great pain and lost his home. It was not until he obtained the inherited blood essence of the primeval sacrificial dragon that he could truly rebuild his home. And it was only at this moment that his home was truly rebuilt successfully, and he could truly return to the place that belonged to him. Dragon Sacrificial Continent. Return. Long Chen let out a hearty yell, releasing all the repressed feelings of not having a home for many years. Under his control, the Dragon Sacrificial Continent in his god nation trembled slightly. Although it was slight, everyone could feel it. They realized that everything was changing. That familiar environment of the god nation was now breaking away. In that instant, a vast continent appeared beneath the smoky sphere. It was a colossal divine dragon hidden in the clouds, vaguely having the majestic shape of a pre-epic era. Chapter 34-29. The smoke that was originally left behind by the dragon sacrificial continent scattered and sprinkled on every corner of the huge dragon sacrificial continent, completely merging with the dust of the new dragon sacrificial continent, forming a brand new world. Standing in the sky and watching the return of the dragon sacrificial continent, to be honest, this wonderful world, the perfect home, the homeland of the divine dragons, made Long Chen feel extremely touched. From now on, I just want to protect this world with peace of mind, so that all the dragons can live in peace and grow rapidly. Maybe one day, we will really be able to recreate the glory before the Myriad Realms era. Long Chen said word by word. That day will definitely come, Mo Xiaolang said. Who cares? After being nervous for so long, Master Cat has to have a good rest. I thought of a fun idea. I want to pretend to be immortal, weak and powerless, then blend into the mortal world and do all kinds of wonderful things like pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. I want to woo all the beauties in the world. Kitten thought happily. What are you talking about? At this moment, a huge 5-colored phoenix flew over from the dragon sacrificial continent. It was Xueqi. Because her bloodline was also very good, and because Long Chen had swept the spiritual energy of the doomsday onto the dragon sacrificial continent, Xueqi had also obtained good fortune and reached the realm of half-ancestor. Haha, no, I'm just saying that you're good-looking. Kitten smiled embarrassedly. This guy probably had some romantic affairs with a certain divine phoenix before the Myriad Realms era, so Xueqi's appearance was like his nemesis. Kitten was not afraid of anything except Xueqi. You're definitely talking bad about me. See if I don't bite you to death. Xueqi screeched and chased Kitten all over the world. For a moment, everyone laughed happily. The dragon emperors, all the supreme mystical dragons, Long Chen's pair of daughters, and his mother, Yang Yu, all came to their side at this moment. Together with Long Chen, they looked at the majestic dragon sacrificial dragon continent. The dragon attendants were also here. From now on, we will protect our home together, and let the dragons grow stronger again. Long Chen was still the unshakable backbone, and the spiritual pillar of support for everyone. The 15 dragon emperors had never thought that there would be such a moment. All these years, the nurturing and sorting of the dragons of the entire dragon sacrificial continent were all done by the 15 dragon emperors. Long Chen was also grateful to these elders. God of Tai Su said, "Then I'll leave the matters here to you. We can't do anything else. Let's continue to search for the lost origin dragon souls and world origin. Thank you all." Of course, even though the crisis had been resolved, the search for those important items couldn't be stopped. Not only did the dragon attendants have to search for them, but Long Chen would also search for them once everything settled down. Although the Myriad Realms are peaceful now, and basically there won't be any danger, but, in the Myriad Realms, there are too many ancestor gods who are stronger than me. Who knows what will happen to them in the future? If I want the dragon sacrificial continent to have eternal peace, I need to become stronger, until I'm on equal footing with the ancestor god of the fourth era. Only then can the dragon sacrificial continent be truly peaceful. In addition, the Sky Devouring clan hasn't been completely eradicated, so I can't stop. Long Chen still had such a consciousness. If he didn't have a sense of hardship and was greedy for pleasure, he would perish sooner or later. Of course, this matter was temporarily remembered by Long Chen. He knew what to do in the future. At this moment, everyone around him was looking at the entire dragon sacrificial continent emotionally. Xueqi and Kitten had already gone to play happily. Long Yen dragged her younger brother and walked curiously in the surrounding starry sky. This was the first time they had officially appeared in the myriad realms. Mo Xiaolang and Xueqi were discussing how to spend the next few days, how to have a holiday, and how to live their two-person world. Yang Lingqing said that she was going to cultivate in seclusion and become an ancestor god of destruction. It seemed like everything was going well. Lingxi and Li Xuanji were leaning on Long Chen's side. They also needed peace. The dragon sacrificial continent had already stabilized, and the eternal god territory was also operating. The divine dragon's origin ground still existed in the east, but the divine planet of destiny not far away was very eye-catching, because it was the divine dragon clan's pain. Long Chen looked at the dragon sacrificial continent and said regretfully, "Everything is very beautiful, but it seems to be over. The only thing that's not too comfortable is that in our world, there are too few gods and demons. We dragons only number about 100 billion. Although there are still a lot of inherited essence blood and origin dragon souls, the number of descendants is really too few. We have to work hard to reproduce. How many years do we have to reproduce before there are hundreds of billions of lives like in the chaotic divine realm?" The 9 chaotic continents of the chaotic divine realm added up weren't even as big as the current dragon sacrificial continent. In fact, they were far smaller. But the problem was that the number of dragons was really too few. The god of Tai Su nodded and said, "Yes, the dragon sacrificial continent experienced extinction, and in the end, it was almost completely extinct. It's too difficult to regain its former glory, and it's hard to increase the population for the time being, unless the divine dragons that were cursed back then can break the curse and return. I've calculated that the number of cursed divine dragons is about 1 trillion, which is equivalent to a few chaotic divine realms' chaotic divine clan. Although it's far from the number before the epoch, the current dragon sacrificial continent can accommodate this many. Divine planet of destiny, curse realm, and other places. Those cursed divine dragons definitely needed to be broken, and this task fell on Lingxi. Long Chen looked at Lingxi, who was in her arms. She nodded and said, "Don't worry, Chen. I'll do my best." Speaking of this, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she said, "After Yang Shi of the Sky-Swallowing clan died in battle, the curse of the ancestral gods was broken. This means that the 10th ancestral dragon may have transferred the source of the curse to Yang Shi, and let Yang Shi take control of all the curses. Maybe these cursed divine dragons are related to Yang Shi, and if they are, it'll be great." "Makes sense." The god of great essence screamed and showed a look of ecstasy. He said loudly, "Why didn't I think of that? My stupid brain, we didn't think of that. Quick, let's go to Divine Planet of Destiny and have a look. Maybe there's hope. Maybe we don't have to wait for Lingxi to become the ancestral god of the 4th era." The conversation between the god of great essence and Lingxi made everyone very happy. The Dragon Emperor didn't follow them, but helped to take care of Long Yen, who was acting recklessly, to prevent her from running away. Long Chen, Lingxi, Li Xuanji, Mo Xiaolang, and the others, along with the 6 dragon servants, hurried to Divine Planet of Destiny. "If that's the case, it'll be great," Long Chen said excitedly. Those curses were great torment to all mystical dragons. Moreover, they had already lasted for an epoch. Who could understand how much pain a curse of 100 million years had to endure? One of Long Chen's biggest wishes was to let those divine dragons gain freedom and a new life, so that they could get rid of the terrible curse. This wish was no less than finding the origin dragon soul of the ancestral dragon. This was also a very important task that Long Qinglan had entrusted to him. The excitement in his heart was not much different from the excitement he felt when he killed the devouring dragon servant. In the blink of an eye, they stepped on the land of Divine Planet of Destiny. "Little Shi, come and have a look." Long Chen sent her to the front. She was an expert in this aspect. Long Chen easily opened the passage inside the Divine Planet of Destiny. The whole interior of the Divine Planet of Destiny was filled with white snakes made of the cursed divine dragons. Those white snakes used to be like ghosts, wandering inside the Divine Planet of Destiny for 100 million years. 100 million years of torture. In the past, they wandered aimlessly. But this time, after opening the Divine Planet of Destiny, everyone could clearly see a vast expanse of whiteness. Countless white snakes were inside. They were no longer leisurely, but very manic. They collided with the inside of the Divine Planet of Destiny. When the Divine Planet of Destiny opened, they even rushed out and collided with Long Chen and the others. "How is it?" Seeing this situation, Long Chen and the others' hearts were in their throats. This was very possible. There must have been some changes that caused this to happen. It must be the cause of Yangxi's death. Ling Shi was stunned for a moment. She lowered her head and in her field of vision, she could see that she was controlling a white snake. Upon closer inspection, there was a white rune flickering on the head of the white snake. That was none other than its curse. The reason why it was flickering was because the curse was already extremely unstable. Break. When Ling Shi's black ring touched the curse suddenly collapsed. The white snake let out a hissing sound, and its divine body suddenly expanded in front of Long Chen and the others. It turned from illusory to corporeal, and that familiar dragon head, dragon claws, and dragon scales all appeared in front of Long Chen and the others. Roar. It was a dragon roar that had been suppressed for 100 million years. That divine dragon wandered around Long Chen. At first, it was in a very manic state, as if it was still in a state of torture. It was not until it saw the surroundings clearly and saw the dragon sacrificial continent below that it slowly stopped. Finally, it landed in front of Long Chen and the others. It turned into a human, a skinny old man. Tears flowed down his old face. Looking at Long Chen and the others, he was speechless. 100 million years of torture had even made him forget how to speak. If it was in the past, Lingxi would definitely not let the cursed divine dragon recover. Success. At that moment, Long Chen was extremely excited. He quickly hugged Lingxi and spun her around a few times. Even the dragon attendants' faces were filled with disbelief. They seemed to have gone crazy. Some even had tears in their eyes. This scene made them so excited that they were about to go crazy. Stop. Don't be so excited. The god of Tai Su pulled Long Chen and pulled Lingxi out of his arms. He asked excitedly, "My darling, tell me quickly. How many dragons can you break the curse?" This was the key. Curse. The old man dropped to his knees, looking down at the countless white snakes beneath the surface of the God Star of Destiny. He finally remembered the 100 million years of torture, and could only shrug his shoulders and weep bitterly. Everyone was silent, waiting for Lingxi's final answer. PS1. I have posted a poll on the official WeChat account, Feng Qingyang, regarding the dragon blood ending. The madman needs to know all the readers' opinions on the ending. That's right, it's all of them. The more votes there are, the more accurate the data will be. Therefore, please come to the official account and vote. For those who don't follow me, you can search for Feng Qingyang on WeChat. I am a web writer with a big V. Because the WeChat poll is the fairest and visible to everyone, please participate and give me the real data. The poll will close soon. Seeing the ancestral dragon, the mystical dragons who had been freed were extremely excited. They prostrated in front of Long Chen with the etiquette of the mystical dragons. They had all seen the curse and the mystical dragons being freed from it. After the intense excitement, they calmed down. This was the reason why Long Chen had transformed into the primordial blood spiritual dragon. There would definitely be many mystical dragons returning this time. While they rejoiced, Long Chen also needed to let the mystical dragons understand what had happened during this epoch. In the blink of an eye, over 100 million, then a billion, then 10 billion, then a trillion. After 2 hours, trillions of mystical dragons had returned. This was equivalent to the number of living beings on the draconic torture continent. However, there were still more on the divine planet of destiny. Below Long Chen, all the mystical dragons were very obedient. They turned into human forms and stood in the starry sky outside the divine planet of destiny, waiting for their brothers and sisters to return. Occasionally, they would look at the ancient blood spirit dragon in the sky with reverence. That was their guiding light. Indeed, this process didn't take much effort for Lingxi. She just needed time. He didn't expect that the curse would be so easily dealt with. It was not easy at all. Long Chen thought that it would be a big test for Lingxi. Luckily, he killed Yangxi. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. The curses on the entire divine planet of destiny were all broken. When Lingxi came out from below, there were countless mystical dragons above her head. Of course, they were all in human forms, but the number was still much more than the number of dragons on the draconic torture continent. And this was only the number of one divine planet of destiny. When everyone was present, the primordial blood spiritual dragon, who was far above the starry sky, descended in front of the mystical dragons. In their eyes, he took on the appearance of Long Chen. Of course, none of the mystical dragons here had seen the true human form of the ancestral dragon. Therefore, they didn't even know the difference between the one before them and the primordial blood spiritual dragon from the War of the Eras. They were just surprised that the ancient blood spirit dragon didn't die in that terrible War of the Eras. After all, before they were cursed, they received news that the ancient blood spirit dragon had died in battle. Mystical Dragon Clan. Long Chen's loud voice spread across the sky. At this moment, he was a true ancestral dragon. Although these were all his seniors, Long Chen had to bring them back to the embrace of the draconic torture continent. It has been 100 million years since you were cursed and suffered. 100 million years ago, the sky-devouring clan invaded. I'm sure everyone knows what happened. But I don't know if you know that we lost, and even the draconic torture continent was destroyed. Next, Long Chen told the mystical dragons about the efforts of the dragon servants, his birth, the inheritance of the ancient blood spirit dragon, and his rise to power step by step until the War of Doomsday, when he killed the devouring dragon servants, ruined the sky-devouring clan's plan, and finally, when Yangshi died, the curse was broken. The mystical dragons finally knew the details. Of course, they also knew who Long Chen was. Boom, boom, boom. After he finished speaking, the human forms of the mystical dragons all knelt on the ground, tears welling up in their eyes. Their tears over 100 million years made Long Chen a little speechless. He endured it for a while before saying passionately in a clear voice, "Since everyone has escaped the curse and returned to our home, to our hometown, from now on, we are all brothers and sisters. I, Long Chen, promise everyone that I will protect everyone and protect the draconic torture continent. One day, our world will be restored to the prosperity it had before the epoch. This doesn't just require us, but everyone as well. From now on, our mystical dragon clan will be united." Influenced by Long Chen, new hope appeared in the hearts of the mystical dragons. They gained a brand new life and saw the draconic torture continent. Although it wasn't as huge as the draconic torture continent before the epoch, it was familiar and full of vitality. The mystical dragon clan will be united. The mystical dragons shouted in unison. That was hundreds of trillions of voices that reverberated in the endless starry sky. Their determination gave Long Chen even more hope. There were too many mystical dragons among them, and they had finally returned. Everyone, you can return to the draconic torture continent and experience our home. As for us, we still need to help more compatriots and let them return. After hearing Long Chen's words, the mystical dragons cheered in unison. They wanted to return to the draconic torture continent so much that they couldn't hold it in anymore. One after another, they transformed into mystical dragons. In an instant, hundreds of trillions of mystical dragons were born at the same time and flew towards the draconic torture continent. The vastness of the scene was simply too shocking. Hundreds of trillions of mystical dragons soaring into the sky. This scene had appeared in Long Chen's mind countless times. At this time it was really happening. How could Long Chen not be excited? Hundreds of trillions of mystical dragons landed on the new desolate and uninhabited draconic torture continent. From now on they would build a new world and a new city here. The draconic torture continent was already so huge that even if the hundreds of trillions of mystical dragons rushed in, they wouldn't cause any ripples. Are you all right? The extremely excited Long Chen came before Lingxi. I haven't seen you for a long time. You're actually this excited. Lingxi was shocked by Long Chen's bright smile. Yes, I'm moved by myself. Am I a coward? Long Chen himself felt that it had been a long time since he was this relaxed and excited. The return of hundreds of trillions of mystical dragons. This wasn't just a dream. No, I feel that you're very noble. Lingxi's eyes were still filled with admiration when she looked at him. I'm not tired at all. Let's go to the Curse Realm. Lingxi herself couldn't wait any longer. She wanted to see how happy Long Chen would be if the trillions of mystical dragons returned to the draconic torture continent and made it bustle with activity. Such days would only take about 2 months, or even less. She couldn't help but not rest. 1 month would be enough. Let's go. They came to the east and arrived at the Curse Realm. In front of them were countless stars. On each star, there was a black jade dragon head that was eternally imprisoned. At this time, Even the stars were trembling. Chapter 34-31. In the past, Long Chen had brought some of the elder gods into the death world before they had entered the apocalypse. When the apocalypse had collapsed, Long Chen had allowed them to leave as well. Elder god Ling Su was one of them. However, Elder god Ling Su was on very good terms with him. When she heard Long Chen mention the return of the mystical dragons, she came running over. She was a frequent visitor on the Draconic continent. Now, the Draconic continent was bustling with activity. Your world is really beautiful. When Long Chen and the others headed for the Curse Realm, Elder god Ling Su followed and said enviously, "Is that so?" Perhaps compared to the other worlds, the Draconic continent was just too superior. Of course. Elder god Ling Su was enjoying herself so much that she forgot to go home. Now that the Sky Devourer's calamity was over and peace was restored, it seemed as though building their own world was the only thing the Elder Gods could do. Elder God Ling Su had been thinking about how to make the Ling Su Star Ocean more beautiful. "Don't worry about me. I'll take a look around. You go and help your mystical dragon clan break free from the curse." Elder God Ling Su smiled warmly. Her smile was getting closer and closer to the warmth she had before the epic. All right. In front of them were the countless black jade dragon heads in the Curse Realm. Many of them were already showing signs of transforming into dragons. Without another word, Lingxi transformed into a beam of light and moved through the countless stars at terrifying speed. Every time she arrived, the mystical dragons would truly break free from the curse and be reborn. Soon, another day had passed. The number of divine dragons cursed in the Curse Realm was slightly less than half of the number on the blessed planet of destiny, but it was still quite a lot. Long Chen repeated the process from before, guiding these seniors so that they could return to their homes, to the dragon sacrificial continent. Seeing them cry tears of joy, Long Chen felt a sense of accomplishment. He asked Elder God Ling Su to help Mo Xiaolang and the others look after the mystical dragons that had just returned, while he brought Lingxi to the next cursed location. Fortunately, the dragon attendants had already found all the cursed locations. Most of them were well hidden. There were more than 10 of them. Long Chen couldn't wait any longer. He wanted these trillions of mystical dragons to return to the dragon sacrificial continent. He was more anxious than anyone else, as though the mystical dragons wouldn't be able to return if he was a step slower. While Lingxi was in the new cursed land, helping the mystical dragons break free from the cursed shell, Long Chen opened the death rain to its greatest extent. He transformed into the primordial spiritual bloodline dragon and stood guard beside the death rain. Upon receiving his summons, the awakened mystical dragons rushed into the death rain and returned to the dragon sacrificial continent through the countless gates of the dragon sacrificial continent. From Mo Xiaolong's point of view, there was a huge blood-colored vortex in the sky of the dragon sacrificial continent. At every moment, there were countless mystical dragons returning from it, soaring, and landing on the dragon sacrificial continent. They all had memories, and could even find their former family members and companions. Of course, most of their family members and companions had already died in the War of the Eras. Not only were there many mystical dragons, but there were also countless species. These days, Long Chen had seen too many unimaginable mystical dragons. The species of mystical dragons he knew in his life couldn't even compare to the ones he was seeing now. There were low-level red dragons, blue dragons, mid-level mystical dragons, 5-clawed golden dragons, 8-winged red dragons, high-level sky mystic blue fire dragons, ice armor oceanic dragons, 9 heavens wind-riding dragons, 5 mountains dragons, 9 winged sky dragons, golden thunder dragons, and so on. There were also super mystical dragons. Sacred Palace Thunder Dragon, 9-headed Soul Terror Dragon, Heavenly Palace Thunder Dragon, 8 Tribes Stupa Dragon, 3,000 Star Soul Dragons, and so on. Of course, there were also many ultimate mystical dragons such as the Primordial Demonic Dragon, Great Creation Yin Yang Dragon, Chaos Green Fire Dragon, Million Silverblade Dragon, and so on. They were basically the strongest. Back then, the dragon sacrificial continent was said to have over 100 million species of mystical dragons. It was really true. At least, Long Chen had seen tens of millions of species. Back then, there were definitely more than 1 trillion mystical dragons on the dragon sacrificial continent. In his and Lingxi's practically insane progress, the cursed lands disappeared one after another. At every moment, there were millions of mystical dragons passing through the death rain. Under the guidance of the primordial blood spirit dragon, they excitedly, emotionally, and even wept bitterly as they returned to the brand new dragon sacrifice continent. The originally spacious dragon sacrificial continent finally became crowded due to the millions, or even trillions of mystical dragons flying in the air. Now, almost every mountain on the dragon sacrificial continent had a mystical dragon flying in the air. It was truly a world that belonged to mystical dragons. Trillions of mystical dragons had returned and occupied over 99% of the dragon sacrificial continent. Of course, this was their territory to begin with. Finally, after a little more than a month, Lingxi had settled all the cursed lands. Although it didn't consume a lot of energy, she was still exhausted and returned to the Tower of Time to rest. Long Chen did a total count. The number of divine dragons that were cursed and had returned was a total of about 1.3 trillion. Now, the dragon sacrificial continent was filled with the divine dragon race. Not only in terms of quantity, but also in terms of strength and world level, the dragon sacrificial continent was now the number one among all worlds. Moreover, it was ahead of the original level worlds in all aspects. For example, the chaos gods in the chaotic divine realm and the mystical dragons had once again become the most powerful race in all worlds. Of course, putting aside the ancestor gods, Long Chen was still inferior to those existences above the ancestor gods of the Seventh Era. Now that the Doomsday had allowed the ancestor gods to reach perfection, it would be even harder to deal with them. However, fortunately, all worlds were at peace now. Long Chen had saved every ancestor god's life, so there was no need to worry about the future safety of the dragon sacrificial continent. This was the time when Long Chen was the most excited. He was currently under the sky of the dragon sacrificial continent. Below him were countless mystical dragons. Mystical dragons like to maintain their form the most, so below him was the scene of trillions of mystical dragons soaring in the sky. At this moment, Long Chen transformed into the ancient blood spiritual dragon. He was the largest mystical dragon. When he was in the sky, all the mystical dragons could see him. The ancestor dragon was the ancestor of all dragons. It was the ancestor dragon that gave birth to the world and mystical dragons. Therefore, when the ancestor dragon appeared, all the mystical dragons quieted down. They landed on the ground and faced Long Chen with a very respectful attitude, expressing their respect and obedience. Naturally, Long Chen was the current leader of the clan in their hearts. Facing so many seniors, Long Chen even felt nervous. His voice swept across the sky and earth. Logically speaking, all of you are my seniors. Now that you have returned, I congratulate all of you on regaining your freedom. Now that all the mystical dragons are here, I will tell you all about what happened in the past few years and my hopes for the future. The mystical dragons were very quiet. Long Chen told them about his origins, the evolution and destruction of the dragon sacrificial continent in the past 100 million years, and then its rebirth, as well as his fight against the sky-devouring clan. Finally, he let the mystical dragons understand why they were able to escape from the curse. After understanding everything, the mystical dragons were very touched and had tears in their eyes. Now that they were free, they would never forget the pain of 100 million years. Although Long Chen was a descendant, they would not see it that way. In their hearts, the current Long Chen was the ancestor dragon, the object of their greatest reverence. They cheered for the new world and for the ancestor dragon. Now, everyone knows what the situation is like in the myriad worlds. We need to develop and grow stronger. I hope that from now on, our race will be able to unite and love one another. Everyone will work hard together, and one day, we will return to the glorious days of our dragon sacrificial continent before the epoch. This was Long Chen's dream. Of course, it was the dream of all the mystical dragons now. Yes, the sound that could topple mountains and overturn seas spread out. It was simply too wide. Their reactions filled Long Chen's heart with satisfaction. Bringing back the mystical dragons was something he would be proud of for the rest of his life. With a common goal, there was no need to be so serious. Long Chen said loudly, "Now, let's celebrate to our heart's content." For a time, the entire dragon sacrificial continent was bustling with excitement. Seeing such an excited world full of vitality, Long Chen was also filled with hope. Now that the infinite worlds were at peace, it was the best world for the dragon sacrificial continent to flourish. "I really envy your world," ancestor god Ling Su said from the side. The Ling Su star ocean was also very beautiful before the epoch. Long Chen thought of that world. Ancestor God Ling Su nodded. She tilted her head and pondered, saying, I'm a little worried. Right now, the Draconic Right continent is clearly the best world out of all the worlds. Say, with so many ancestor gods, would there be people who don't know how to be grateful and target you? Long Chen had thought of this before. He said, if there really is such a shameless person, I'm not afraid. I even survived the sky-devouring clan's crisis. I will definitely be able to deal with one or two ancestor gods. Indeed, ancestor god Ling Su's thoughts were not unreasonable. The dragon sacrificial continent was envied by others, especially before the epoch. The dragon sacrificial continent was number 1. But at that time, the 10 great ancestor dragons were also number 1. And now, Long Chen was far from being number 1. The number 1 would only be the 4th era's ancestor god. Just as he said this, Endless Stone of the Endless Cosmos Mountain appeared nearby. He looked around in surprise and said, Long Chen, this is your world. How can the dragon sacrificial continent be so majestic and vast? It even surpasses the 4th era's ancestor god's world. This was a dangerous person. He was originally nearby, so he was attracted by the trillions of divine dragons. Long Chen had made him suffer for a period of time. Even if Long Chen saved him, he would probably still be resentful. Thank you for your compliment. Long Chen stood in front of him, worried that he would harm the dragon sacrificial continent. There's no need for that. Endless Stone raised his head and looked at Long Chen. He suddenly laughed coldly and said, The new Infinite Worlds has begun. I have to congratulate you. Your world is number 1, and I believe you are also number 1. It seems that in the near future, the dragon sacrificial continent will still be the same as before the epoch, ruling over the infinite worlds and suppressing all the ancestor gods to the point where they can't even lift their heads. This sentence was quite disgusting. Chapter 34-32. There was no point in his mocking and sowing discord. Long Chen had a bad temper. He sneered and said, All right, I'll give you 10 breaths of time to scram. Otherwise, you're going to suffer again. He didn't expect Endless Stone to not be afraid. Although he was indeed distancing himself from Long Chen, his face was filled with a sinister smile. He was rough to begin with, and this made him look extremely ugly. The crisis of the sky-devouring clan has been resolved. All the ancestral gods have regained their freedom. You did help them during the crisis, but you won't be of any use in the future. So don't be too proud. You're not as awesome as you think you are. Towards the end, he scrammed and left Long Chen's line of sight. However, he was still laughing heartily. I knew it. There are shameless, ungrateful people among the ancestral gods. Elder God Ling Su was extremely angry. Long Chen had turned the tide of the battle against the heaven-devouring clan, saving the lives of all the elder gods. And yet, just as the battle had concluded, the Infinity Stone had come to mock him and sow discord. Let's hope it's a minority. To Long Chen, fighting with the ancestor god was the most meaningless thing. What he wanted to do the most now was to find other world origins and origin dragon souls. At the same time, he wanted to strengthen the dragon sacrificial continent. Of course, he wanted to make himself stronger. When he was strong enough, he had a plan. He was prepared to find a way to exterminate the entire sky-devouring clan. Now, he was temporarily out of danger. I think there are many short-sighted ancestor gods. They are narrow-minded, hot-tempered, ungrateful, treacherous, cunning, and heartless. They are like uncivilized beasts. You treat them well and even work hard without asking for anything in return, but there will always be such despicable people who will gossip, deliberately defame you, and stir up trouble behind your back. They are shameless, and they even want all the ancestor gods to target you. These ancestor gods are evil and wretched by nature. At the end of the day, their hearts are occupied by darkness. I think there are many such shameless people among the ancestor gods. In fact, they might even make up more than 1/10 of them. After all, the ancestral gods had just descended and Endless Stone and chaotic ape ancestors appeared. Elder God Ling Su was infuriated, and she was crying out for Long Chen. After all, Long Chen had almost sacrificed Ling Xi's life during the apocalypse in order to bring back this peaceful world. He didn't ask for anything in return. All he wanted was to be safe. The sinister and shameless nature of human nature was displayed to the extreme by endless stone ancestor. I hope no ancestral gods come to disturb my dragon sacrificial continent. Long Chen really did not want to fight with them. It was meaningless. The real enemy had not been eradicated yet. But he knew that ancestral god Ling Su was not going overboard. Even in the mortal world, even in a small town, there would be those sinister people who would bite back when you helped them. The dragon sacrificial continent is so prosperous and strong, but I don't have the ability above the ancestral god of the fourth era. In the future, I really have to be more careful in case there are ungrateful ancestral gods who will come to plunder. From then on, Long Chen stationed himself on the dragon sacrificial continent and was very careful. After all, with the trillions of divine dragons, it was no longer easy for the entire dragon sacrificial continent to return to God Nation. On a certain day, Long Chen received a message from the Chaos Ancestral God, asking him to go to the place where the Doomsday appeared last time. There was something important to announce. It seemed that the top-level ancestral gods had united. Long Chen was focused on the dragon sacrificial continent and naturally did not know. Generally speaking, the core location was still the location of the ancestral gods from the fourth era, followed by the ancestral gods from the fifth era. The hierarchy was very strict, and this was clearly reflected in the positions of the ancestral gods. Long Chen decided to stay at the outermost level. There were roughly over 5,000 ancestral gods from the ninth era who had survived. This was the most densely populated place. Everyone knew Long Chen. The ancestral gods in the surroundings all smiled and greeted Long Chen. Most of them were very friendly to Long Chen. However, there were one or two who watched silently from afar, their lips curling up into a cold smile as they discussed with the ancestral gods beside them. Everyone is here. This was the voice of one of the ancestral gods from the fourth era. All right, we can announce it now. Send out a representative. Who will announce it? The ancestral gods from the fourth era did not have much interest in this. Finally, an ancestral god from the fifth era stood out. This was the ancestral god from the heavenly deity Sacred World in the northern starfield. If Long Chen did not guess wrongly, this should be ancestral god Lu Ya. He was the ancestor of heavenly deity Lu Ya, the ancestral god of the creation ancestral god. In his eyes, there was the pattern of the 8 trigrams, just like heavenly deity Lu Ya. However, this ancestral god Lu Ya was very solemn, and he announced loudly, "Today, all the ancestral gods have gathered here to announce 2 things. These 2 things were decided after the discussion of all the ancestral gods from the 4th and 5th era. Today, we will officially announce it to the myriad worlds." His voice was loud enough, and for a moment, everyone quietened down, waiting for these 2 important matters. Long Chen also narrowed his eyes and looked at the ancestral gods at the core location. As expected, the myriad worlds had entered a new stage. He was indeed not as important as the endless stone ancestor had said. First, now that the doomsday has broken, the plan that the sky-devouring clan had prepared for 100 million years has been destroyed by us, and there is no possibility of them escaping. After the sky-devouring clan's disaster in the 10th era, the myriad worlds have changed and declined to this point. Fortunately, we survived this disaster, and now, there are many things to do in the myriad worlds, and we will soon enter an era of rapid development and recovery. This is a new era, as though the myriad worlds have new life. Hence, after the unanimous decision of the ancestral gods from the 4th and 5th era, at this point, ancestor god Lu Ya kept everyone in suspense for a while before announcing in a loud voice. From today onwards, the 10th epoch of the myriad worlds has officially ended. From today onwards, the myriad worlds will enter the 11th epoch. We have given this epoch a name, the Epoch of Genesis. This year is the first year of the era of Genesis. From today onwards, the era of Genesis will be the new calendar of the myriad worlds. The 10th era has passed, and it represents the arrival of the new 11th era. Let us rejoice together. These words made everyone's blood boil. Even Long Chen was affected. In fact, he was looking forward to this moment, but the ancestral gods all had different expressions, and the sky-devouring clan had not been truly annihilated. Announcing the next era just like that, Long Chen felt that it was still too early, and a little childish. However, this was the decision of the ancestral gods from the 4th and 5th era, and there was nothing that Long Chen could do to change it. He just did not get caught up in the excitement, and knew what was more important next. Era of Genesis. The ancestral gods cheered enthusiastically, the arrival of a new era. They were the ancestral gods of the myriad worlds, and they recognized the new calendar, which meant that the entire myriad worlds would enter a new calendar. As for the second matter, listen carefully. Long Chen had a premonition that it had something to do with the management of the myriad worlds. Before the era, the 10 ancestral dragons were in charge, but now the 10 ancestral dragons no longer existed, so it had nothing to do with Long Chen. After a while, ancestral god Luya announced loudly, "We have decided to form the Ancestral Gods Alliance to set the order and laws of the myriad worlds. As for the rules and laws, we will discuss it for a long time, and announce it after some time. But now we will announce the basic rules of the Ancestral Gods Alliance, and that is, any new laws, and any matters that are not stipulated by the law need to be decided and arbitrated, and will be decided by the members of the Ancestral Gods Alliance. Of course, we mean that only the ancestral gods from the 4th and 5th era are members of the Ancestral Gods Alliance, while the other ancestral gods are under the jurisdiction of the Ancestral Gods Alliance. The strong were the ones with power. In the entire myriad worlds, it was the same at all levels. Long Chen thought that there would be ancestral gods who were dissatisfied, but in reality, they did not seem to have much of an opinion towards this decision. Ancestor god Luya continued, "In the Ancestral Gods Alliance, every ancestral god from the 4th era has the right to vote 10 times, and every ancestral god from the 5th era has 1 vote. In the future, the birth of new laws, and the arbitration of matters that are not stipulated by the law, will all depend on the voting results of the Ancestral Gods Alliance. Everyone, do you understand?" Chapter 34-33. In fact, Long Chen had done similar things before. Therefore, Long Chen understood. Of course it was different. The difference was that Long Chen had only used it to restrain the ancestor gods, to prevent them from destroying the myriad worlds. The Ancestor Gods Alliance was just a means. But now, the Ancestor Gods Alliance was the true ruler. Basically, nearly 100 5th-era ancestor gods and a dozen 4th-era ancestor gods replaced the former 10 ancestor dragons to maintain the stability of the myriad worlds. Long Chen had no objections to this. He believed that the 4th and 5th-era ancestor gods were more sensible. With them in charge, there shouldn't be much of a problem. "Is there no problem?" Ancestor god Ling Su asked. "Not much of a problem. There are so many ancestor gods, and they all have the power to destroy worlds and all life. They should be kept in check. Only then will the myriad worlds not be too chaotic." As they chatted, the announcement was made, and the ancestor gods could leave. Long Chen was worried about the dragon sacrificial continent and the billions of mystical dragons, so he prepared to return. However, most of the ancestor gods did not leave. Instead, they got to know and interact with each other. They probably wanted to make more friends and form alliances in the future. If there were conflicts with other ancestor gods, they could help each other. Long Chen did not need that. He had always believed that an alliance with such a strong purpose would not end well. Just like him and ancestor god Ling Su, they had gone through life and death together several times, forming an indestructible friendship. Long Chen, wait. Just as Long Chen opened the Death Realm Dragon Gate and was about to return with Lingxi and ancestor god Ling Su, someone called out to him. He had once caused trouble for Long Chen, but Long Chen did not have a good impression of him. However, he chased up to Long Chen, smiling as if he meant no harm. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? It wasn't easy to meet you. First, I want to apologize for what happened last time. I was reckless. Also, it was because you foiled the Sky Swallowing Clan's plans that I was able to live. So, I want to thank you for your kindness." As the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. Long Chen nodded. "It's all in the past. Now that we are in a new era, it should be time to let it go." He was very willing to let go of the grudge. "I heard that you have a very beautiful world that surpasses the world of the ancestor gods of the 4th era. I'm very interested. Can you take me there to have a look?" It seemed that this was his true goal. However, he only looked curious. Long Chen weighed his options. If he directly rejected him, he would probably lose face and cause trouble. Of course, he was not willing to take this guy there. "Let's go." Long Chen opened the Death Realm and crossed it with him, arriving at the dragon sacrificial continent. Of course, Long Chen was also preventing him from acting recklessly. "Wow! When divine ancestor Xueqi saw the dragon sacrificial continent, even though he was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. His eyes turned red as he said, "Your world, the dragon sacrificial continent. My world is far inferior to yours. Even the fortune ancestor god's fortune world is far inferior to yours." Long Chen smiled. "I'm going down to take a look." Without another word, ancestor Xueqi went down. Long Chen and Lingxi exchanged a glance. Feeling that it was better to be on guard against this guy, he followed. After landing in the eternal life godly domain, he wandered around like a country bumpkin, eyes wide. Then he went to the Dragonrite continent, where he crossed mountains, rivers, and lakes, and conversed with the dragons there. He seemed to be completely at ease with them. How comfortable. Standing on a tall mountain, he took a deep breath of the primordial draconic spirit. The current level of the primordial draconic spirit had long since surpassed the 9-colored chaos spirit energy. It was the best spirit energy in the myriad worlds, so it was only natural that more experts could be born. "Long Chen, I have something to discuss with you." Ancestor Xueqi turned around with a smile on his face, as if he was talking about something insignificant. "Speak." Long Chen knew that the fox's tail was about to be exposed. At first, he thought that Ancestor Xueqi could change his nature and befriend him. "After seeing your world today, I'm really envious. Your primordial dragon spirit has much more spiritual chi than the one in my world. My Anya clan is very weak, and I don't think they have much room for growth in the future. But I have the same desire as you, to make my people stronger. So, I think since we don't get to know each other through Discord, and we're friends now, and your dragon sacrificial continent is also very large, why don't you give me a piece of land and let me transfer 1 billion Anya clan to cultivate here and strengthen them?" "What do you think? How long do I need to cultivate?" Long Chen asked. "Well, of course the longer the better. I mean, it would be better if you could give me such a piece of land permanently so that I can cultivate my Anya clan." Seeing that there seemed to be hope, divine ancestor Xueqi hurriedly said. He actually wanted a piece of land. This method of invasion and occupation was too despicable. To Long Chen, it was tantamount to robbery. Ancestor Xueqi's words were too understated. "I'm sorry, but the dragon sacrificial continent is the home of the divine dragon clan. Every inch of land belongs to us. I can't give you anything you want, not even an inch of land." Long Chen put away his smile and made his attitude clear. He knew that Ancestor Xueqi had no intention of reconciling with him, and only wanted his territory. Therefore, there was no need for him to be polite. "You really want to be so ruthless?" Ancestor Xueqi's expression instantly turned cold. At least 1/10 of the dragon sacrificial continent had turned from day to night. He was now threatening him. Long Chen didn't say anything, but the other party's threat made his eyes flash with killing intent. "Do you know that after the Doomsday War, the origins of my two worlds have been perfected and are much stronger than before? You may not be my match, so I advise you." As Ancestor Xueqi said this, Kitten, Mo Xiaolang, Lingxi, Li Xuanji, and the others appeared from all directions and surrounded him. Long Chen was worried that Ancestor Xueqi would attack the dragon sacrificial continent, so he gave Kitten a look. Kitten laughed and said, "Scram, you big idiot." Due to the chaotic samsara reversal, sacred Ancestor Xueqi was flung out of the dragon sacrificial continent. At the same time, Long Chen and the others quickly followed. When sacred Ancestor Xueqi appeared in the sky above the dragon sacrificial continent, Long Chen appeared beside him while the others were far away. "How dare you!" Ancestor Xueqi was furious. "You were the one who maliciously attacked my world first," Long Chen said. "Aren't you afraid that the Ancestor God Alliance will punish you?" Ancestor Xueqi threatened. Long Chen laughed and said, "You came to snatch my world, so all I did was chase you out. I didn't even touch a single strand of your hair. You can leave now. The Ancestral Gods Alliance isn't stupid, so why would they punish me? If there's anyone, it's you." Ancestor Xueqi became even more furious after hearing Long Chen's words. "You really don't give me any face. Divine Ancestor, face is something you give to yourself." Ancestor Xueqi exploded with anger and said, "You're too naive. I'll let you have a taste of my power, Curtain of Darkness." The world's origin appeared in his hand again. Ancestor Xueqi immediately attacked. The Curtain of Darkness enveloped Long Chen and even tried to cover the dragon sacrificial continent. Perhaps because both worlds' origins had been restored to perfection, he believed that his origin energy far surpassed Long Chen's. That was why he had come to provoke and seek revenge. To be honest, he was deeply envious of the dragon's sacrificial continent. Facing the curtain of darkness, Long Chen couldn't do anything since it was the other party who attacked first. The world's origin energy, massacre, appeared in his hand. He stabbed the blood-colored longsword into his hand and pulled it out with a blood-wheel sword. Rip! With a crisp sound, Long Chen rushed forward. When the curtain of darkness descended, Long Chen's blood-wheel sword, which had reached a new level, burst with blood-colored light and directly pierced through the curtain of darkness. Ah! Since the world's origin had been pierced, it meant that ancestor Xueqi had been pierced. Blood spurted out of his abdomen, and he hurriedly retracted the curtain of darkness to protect his life. His legs turned to jelly when Long Chen broke his attack so easily. Even if you become an ancestral god, you're still in the 9th era, and there's only one world's origin. How can you be so strong? Ancestor Xueqi was still unwilling to believe it. Scram. Long Chen couldn't be bothered to say another word to him. Ancestor Xueqi looked at the hole in the curtain of darkness and said angrily, "How dare you break my world's origin? You're practically asking for my life. Just you wait. I'll immediately go to the Ancestral God Alliance to report you for trying to murder me and destroy my world." Long Chen, just you wait. Do you really think you're so capable? This time, I'll destroy your family. His malevolent expression made Long Chen speechless. He felt that there was no need to act like this. However, ancestral gods had all kinds of personalities, and there were quite a few weirdos like Ancestor Xueqi. He was already used to it. Ancestor Xueqi sneered as he fled. "Long Chen, I'll tell you the truth. Your potential is too great, and it can be seen from this world. I believe that one day, the Draconic Right continent will return to its pre-epic state, and you'll be able to stand above the 4th era's ancestral gods just like before. Now that the 4th era's ancestral gods have finally obtained the authority to lead, do you think they'll let you do whatever you want? Do you think they'll let you climb over their heads and rule over the myriad worlds? You're too naive." Ancestor Xueqi laughed mercilessly. At this time, Long Yen and Long Lin, the pair of young ancestral dragons, also ran over to join in on the fun. One was a primordial spiritual bloodline dragon, and the other was a void cosmic dragon. "Daddy, I want to beat up the bad guys too." Long Yen rushed over in a threatening manner. "You're your son and daughter." Ancestor Xueqi's smile grew even more sinister, but he fled even faster. From his gaze, Long Chen had a premonition that his days wouldn't be peaceful. Chapter 34-34. Ancestral gods were different from other opponents. To kill an ancestral god, one had to destroy the origin of the world. However, once the origin of the world was destroyed, the world and all living beings would be destroyed as well. Therefore, from Long Chen's point of view, he couldn't kill divine ancestor Xueqi. After a slight hesitation, the other party hid far away. Although the ancestral god of the 8th era wasn't weak, he couldn't do anything to Long Chen. Therefore, after driving him away, Long Chen didn't think too much about it. Now that the myriad realms were at peace, the most important thing was to strengthen himself. Long Chen needed some time to settle down. Now that he was the real ancestral dragon, he needed a short period of time to familiarize himself with himself. Therefore, he reached the 4th floor of the Tower of Time. Currently, the living and dying realms, the demonic dragon ancient tomb, the Tower of Time, and the eternal whirlpool were all built on the dragon's sacrificial continent and could be opened at any time. If necessary, the mystical dragons could enter these worlds at any time. The Dragon Emperor and the Supreme Mystical Dragons were stationed there. For example, anyone below the 3rd floor of the Tower of Time would have a chance to cultivate there. As for the 4th floor of the Tower of Time, it was much quieter. Long Chen and Lingxi mostly came in. After all, people like Mo Xiaolang didn't need such a long period of time to cultivate and settle down. Now that Lingxi's greatest mission had been completed, she was basically improving herself easily without much pressure. Long Chen, on the other hand, was familiarizing himself with the divine body that truly belonged to the ancestral dragon over the long period of time. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. Of course, only 3 days had passed in the outside world. During this period of time, Long Chen had a clearer understanding of his current situation. In fact, he was also pondering over the rules of time and so on. Previously, because of one of the rules of the Blood Wheel Sword, he had found slaughter. With slaughter as the guide, he had found the primordial blood spiritual dragon's origin dragon soul. Therefore, Long Chen was wondering whether he could do the same. Before my father reached the ancestor realm, he could travel 100,000 years into the future. Compared to him, my attainments in time are much worse. Concentrating on studying the time rule was also very time-consuming. With his current attainments in time, to comprehend a rule at the level of the Blood Wheel Sword would probably take more than 1,000 years. In fact, the accumulation of time wouldn't have any effect at all. It all depended on fate. However, on a certain day, when there was still no news about the rules of time, Long Chen first received news from the dragon attendants. The dragon attendants were still searching for the origin dragon's soul. Only 3 days had passed in the outside world, but it seemed like they already had a clue. What do you think? Long Chen teleported to the death realm. Come to me. Now, the 6 dragon attendants were gathered together. Within the death world, there were many death world dragon gates that connected to countless worlds. Long Chen had been to the dragon attendants' location before, so he easily passed through the death world and arrived at the designated location. There weren't any worlds around. It was a relatively remote and barren land. Great calamities were everywhere, and ordinary gods and devils wouldn't dare to approach this place. However, there were many stars here, and there was also a star as huge as the Ling Su star. However, the environment was very harsh, and there was no spiritual energy, so it wasn't suitable for living. The entire pitch-black giant was constantly trembling. There were volcanoes erupting inside, shooting into the sky, forming countless rivers of lava on the surface of the giant. The dragon attendants were somewhere on this pitch-black giant. Come here. Seeing that Long Chen had arrived, the dragon attendants waved at him. Long Chen instantly appeared beside them. Did you find anything? The dragon attendants' expressions were more doubtful than excited. This meant that it wasn't obvious that it was the origin dragon's soul or the origin of the world, but it might be a useful clue. There are traces of the rules of time in this region, but they aren't ordinary. At least, the few of us can't destroy them. You understand the rules of time, so I let you take a look. After all, there are too few who know the rules of time in this desolate place. We have to pay attention to the rules of time. If he hadn't said it, Long Chen wouldn't have discovered it. The dragon attendants were pointing at a small quagmire below Long Chen's feet. It was less than 10 centimeters in diameter and 1 centimeter deep. The muddy water was a little fiery red and emitted smoke. The fact that the dragon attendants could discover such a small place showed how serious they were. In order to find what the ancestral dragon had left behind, they had done their best. Strange. Upon closer inspection, Long Chen indeed discovered that the water in the quagmire was like the sea of time around Eternal Dragon City. Time was chaotic, and there were fast and slow times. When fast and slow water collided, huge waves would be produced. Indeed, there are traces of the rules of time. And although it's small, it's also because it's small that it's especially exquisite. Such a small place actually has billions of changes, and even each water particle has its own time. As for the Eternal Dragon City's Sea of Time, although vast, there were a total of 12 changes. Usually, a large area of the sea was dominated by time. On the other hand, this quagmire was only the size of a palm and contained a frightening amount of changes in time. They had probably seen this and knew that ordinary people would not be able to do this, which was why they had sent Long Chen over. Of course, Long Chen saw it more clearly. Did you find anything? The dragon attendants asked nervously. They had searched for so long, and finally found such a small result in this insignificant place. Of course, they hoped that their efforts would be of great use. Let me try. Naturally, he couldn't see the changes with his eyes alone. Long Chen half knelt on the ground, closed his eyes, and focused all his energy on his right palm. Then, he gently touched the water with his palm. Time. It was a very strange feeling. It was as if all the water particles were coming to life under Long Chen's palm. It was as if every tiny life was colliding with his palm. This was the difference in the changes of time, which led to the changes in the water droplets. I've done this before, but I didn't feel anything, said the slaughter dragon attendant with squinted eyes. Long Chen didn't answer him. Instead, he felt it from the perspective of time. At this moment, his entire world was quiet. The water particles in his hand were even clearer. Vaguely, through Long Chen's understanding and control of the rules of time, he could feel that the movements of the water particles were actually transmitting information to him. 9. The first message was the word 9. Because the water particles were colliding with each other for a period of time, and because some of the particles were extremely fast, they first collided with Long Chen's palm and formed the word 9. Li. The next word was the word Li. It was very complicated, and when combined, it meant 9 Li. This made Long Chen think of the 9 Li giant demon. The third word was the word demon. The strokes of this word were as complicated as the word Li. The fourth word was the word domain, which meant that it was the Xueqi demon domain. This Xueqi demon domain shouldn't have much to do with the Xueqi giant demons, but it had a very deep relationship with another even stronger existence. 9 Li Demon Region. Hearing this name, the dragon attendants all remembered. It's that original incipient grade world, right? It's also one of the worlds that return to the infinite worlds. It's in the north, outside the ancestral planet. Yes, it's here. We passed by it last time, but because the creator god is now there, it's not easy to find. New worlds weren't easy to find. Long Chen thought for a while and said, I've been to the 9 Li Demon region. It's a dark world. The people there are very tough, and there are many experts among the gods and demons. The creator god is considered strong among the 5th era's ancestor gods. He should be called Qiyu Demon Ancestor. Yes, it's the Qiyu Demon Ancestor. Long Chen remembered the bull-headed man and said, the Qiyu Demon Ancestor's personality is similar to the 9 Li giant demon. He's cold, cruel, and not easy to talk to. When he first appeared, I told him about the infinite worlds, but he didn't want to talk to me. I think that since the primeval troll has the bloodline of the divine dragon and the infinite world's ancestor god, the 9 Li giant demon must have been created by the sky-swallowing race after swallowing the Qiyu demon ancestor. Although Long Chen had saved the infinite worlds and all the gods and demons, the Qiyu demon ancestor might not worship him. The rule of time in this place only serves to remind us to go to the 9 Li demon region. Long Chen pondered for a while but didn't find anything else. It's possible that the origin dragon's dragon soul or the origin of the world is in the 9 Li demon region. This is the biggest clue. It's better than searching blindly. With a real clue, everyone was very excited. Long Chen said, it's better to be cautious. First of all, we have to get past the Qiyu demon ancestor. If we clash with him, we'll be courting death. The only way is to become friends with him and hope that he will let me enter the Xueqi demon domain to look for him. Second, I reckon that even if we search carefully, we might not be able to find him without any other information. Although this was a negative thought, it was the truth. There's one thing. You definitely can't let the Qiyu demon ancestor know that you're looking for the origin of the world or the dragon's soul. This is your chance to grow stronger. The less people know, the better. It's not good to let others know that you have a chance to become stronger. Otherwise, people will be jealous. After all, the creator gods can't become stronger. He and Lingxi's situation was special. They became creator gods in the inheritance. Now, they were recovering their original realm. I understand that. No matter what, Long Chen decided to go to the 9 Li demon region and meet the Qiyu demon ancestor. Chapter 34-35. In the northeast of the Northern Star area, in a corner of the world, there was a primordial origin realm. This was a world that was shrouded in darkness all year round. It was in the shape of a continent, and from a distance, it looked like a heart that had been eroded by darkness. It was beating, and every time it beat, it would produce a fog that was intertwined with gray and dark purple. A primordial origin realm world was huge enough. This world was called the Nightmare Continent, and it used to be separated from an original incipient realm not far away. Around the Nightmare Continent, deep purple fog had already spread far and wide. It was as if nightmares were happening at any moment. It had to be said that this was a world that would make one's hair stand on end. A black curtain appeared in the dark purple mist. A figure was wrapped in a black cloth, and the figure was heading toward the center of the Nightmare Continent, where the purple mist was the thickest. A faint, enchanting female voice could be heard on the nightmare continent. It was so enchanting that one couldn't help but fall into a vortex of passion. Who is it? Just at this moment, the enchanting female voice softly called out. It's me, Saint Ancestor Xueqi. I'm here to see you. Saint Ancestor Xueqi revealed his face from the dark curtain. Come here, the sweet female voice said. Sacred Ancestor Xueqi hurriedly stepped forward and pierced through the purple mist. Below him was a boundlessly large pool of purple water. There were over 10,000 men in the pool, and none of them wore any clothes. Some of them looked terrified, some nervous, and some impatient. Saint Ancestor Xueqi realized that these tens of thousands of men were probably the strongest gods and demons in the entire nightmare continent. Of course, to the ancestor gods, they were all inferior beings. In their eyes, they were no different from mortals. In the center of the purple pool, there was a smooth purple stone. At the moment, several men were surrounding a woman. The enchanting female voice was coming from this stone. Saint Ancestor Xueqi knew what they were doing from afar. He knew this woman very well, which was why he had come here. But then again, she had a huge appetite for tens of thousands of men. You've come at the right time, Xueqi. These mortals are so weak and useless. Just then, the woman stood up, her proud body in full view. With a wave of her arm, the tens of thousands of gods and demons around her flew away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The ancestor god of a primordial chaos realm was the 7th era's ancestor god, and this woman was one of them. She was one level stronger than Sacred Ancestor Xueqi. Sacred Ancestor Xueqi couldn't resist her at all. Under her control, he could only become her tool. Sacred Ancestor Xueqi trembled as he said, "How can you not even spare mortals? They are your descendants." The woman had put on her clothes and was sitting on a smooth stone, her snow-white legs dangling in the air. She was none other than the Nightmare Elder God, but in terms of appearance, she was a peerless beauty who could cause the downfall of empires. She was filled with allure. I can't help it. I want a baby too much. I think that as long as I work hard, a miracle will definitely happen. The Nightmare Ancestor God's cherry lips parted as she spoke in a faint voice. So, after the end of the world, you've been, yes, but not right now. But, for your sake, we can come here often in the future. I believe that we might even be able to have a child together. The Nightmare Elder God said with a hopeful look on his face. Ancestor Dark Knight was speechless. He shook his head and said, "That's impossible. I've told you before that it's impossible for the creator gods to reproduce. We can only create life, but we can't continue our bloodline. We were born from the myriad worlds and are attached to the origin of the world. Our natural mission is to protect the world, all living beings, and the origin of the world. We can create countless lives, but reproduction is impossible." The Nightmare Elder God was very angry. She knew that it was impossible, but she just couldn't accept it. If even the smallest of life forms could have their own children, why couldn't she? She desperately wanted a child, so every time she saw that mortals could get pregnant, she would get very angry. She was the ancestor god of creation, and now she was more or less the nightmare of the nightmare continent. Scram! I'll find another ancestor god. They'll definitely give birth, the Nightmare Elder God insisted. By now, the groundwork had been laid. Ancestor Xueqi said, "Since you're so insistent, I've thought of a way. Your law allows you to hypnotize and completely change a person's thoughts and memories. That way they'll listen to you, right?" "That's right. What's your method?" The Nightmare Elder God stared at him with her dark purple eyes. Ancestor Xueqi smiled and said, "That's easy. I went to the Draconic continent to visit Long Chen a few days ago. Guess what I saw?" "What?" "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me, or I won't go easy on you." The Nightmare Elder God couldn't hold back anymore. Ancestor Xueqi said, "You know Long Chen very well. He inherited the legacy of the primordial blood spirit dragon, one of the 10 great ancestor dragons. Logically speaking, he's also an ancestor god, so he shouldn't be able to have children. However, he was a mortal before he became an ancestor god. At that time, he already had 2 children. The most amazing thing is that both children have the bloodline of his ancestor dragon. I saw one of them very clearly. It was a young primordial blood spirit dragon. He has children." The Nightmare Elder God was very envious. She was just too anxious. All the gods and devils on the Nightmare continent were too weak for her. She couldn't find anyone to nurture or talk to. She had a deep love in her heart, but she had no one to take care of. That was why she was so desperate for a child. She didn't know what she had been like before the epoch, but now that her memories were blank, she desperately wanted to have a child. She was probably the only elder god with such thoughts, and this was why sacred ancestor Dark Knight had come looking for her. Ancestor Xueqi said, "What I mean is, if you want children, but you can't give birth to them for the time being, you can secretly take away his children, hypnotize them, and make them recognize you as their mother. You'll accompany them as they grow up, and when they grow up, they'll only acknowledge you. What's the difference between that and giving birth to them yourself?" The Nightmare Elder God's eyes shone with desire after hearing Ancestor Xueqi's words. She could already imagine the existence of these two adorable creatures. Moreover, she wouldn't need to conceive them. "You can't do that. Long Chen saved the myriad of worlds, and we owe him a debt of gratitude." "How can I take away his?" Ancestor Xueqi interrupted. "You don't understand. Saving the myriad of worlds is a thing of the past. This is the era of Genesis, a new world. Long Chen has too many resources, and many ancestor gods are jealous of him. He has a lot of room for growth, and the ancestor gods of the Ancestor God Alliance are afraid of him. They don't want him to reach the pinnacle and threaten their position. Therefore, he won't be able to mature for long. You're the 7th era's ancestor god, and you're much stronger than him. Also think about it. Long Chen was going to die sooner or later, but you took away his child and helped him raise it. In reality, you were also helping him to preserve his bloodline. Isn't that right? This is more like you repaying a debt of gratitude. Back then, Long Chen fought the Doomsday War to save himself. He only saved us because he had no other choice. I believe that if he had a choice, he definitely wouldn't want us to appear. In the current myriad worlds, he doesn't have much status. In any case, I don't think you should waste this opportunity. The laws you're proficient in will definitely make those two youngsters with great potential follow you wholeheartedly. Perhaps one day, you'll have 2 4th-era ancestor god children by your side. When that time comes, who will have the final say in the myriad of worlds? Wherever there were people, there would be conflicts. Currently, there were close to 10,000 ancestor gods in a single world. There was bound to be mutual deception and undercurrents. In the long run, the kindness of Long Chen in the Doomsday War wouldn't last long due to the selfishness of human nature. I don't think there's anything to think about. In the end, Long Chen is just a puny 9th-era ancestor god. Anyone can bully him. If you're conflicted here, you might let someone else get to him first. Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight had grasped hold of Nightmare's weakness and was constantly tempting her to convince herself. If Nightmare hadn't rejected him at the start, then she would have been dragged into this whirlpool by Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight's persuasion. It's impossible for ancestor gods to have children, but you can use this method to obtain 2 talented children. Isn't that what you want? After a period of consideration, the Nightmare Ancestor God finally nodded. As you said, Long Chen is the target of so many ancestor gods' jealousy. One day, he'll be finished. I'm only helping his children. However, I have to go see how they are. Don't try to fool me. Absolutely not. Ancestor Xueqi laughed heartily. He'd seen Long Chen's son and daughter before, and knew that the Nightmare Ancestor God wouldn't refuse them. They were simply too attractive. He noticed that the Nightmare Ancestor God's eyes were glowing with maternal love. The Ancestor Gods don't seem to be very smart. Apart from their abilities, what's the difference between them and the lowest of mortals? As a slightly intelligent ancestor god, Ancestor Xueqi pondered this question. Long Chen, it's not that I want to pick on you, but you're too envied. You won't even give my Anya clan a piece of land. I just don't want you to have a good time. Today is just the beginning. Your world used to be number 1 in all the realms, but you can't keep it. Chapter 34-36. After making some preparations, Long Chen came to the Xueqi Fiend domain. He had already been here last time. The Xueqi Fiend domain was a world filled with fiend energy. It was as if it was occupied by primeval troll. In the entire domain, once the mortals broke through, they would become fiends, not gods. Therefore, it was indeed a world of fiends, but different from primeval troll. The Xueqi fiend clan was about the same as the fiends on Pangu continent. After 100 million years of decline, it was originally a world of the 5th era, but now it was equivalent to the 7th era. The entire Xueqi fiend domain was like a nest of fiends, somewhat similar to a cosmic beehive. However, it was not a maze, and there were many mortals of the Xueqi fiend clan living here. The entire Xueqi fiend domain was enveloped by a layer of black formation diagram. When Long Chen appeared outside the formation diagram, he found that he could not go in. This looks a bit like the 9-colored chaos formation diagram when the chaotic divine realm first appeared. The 9-colored chaos formation diagram had the function of protecting the chaotic divine realm. But, it was set up by the Qiyu fiend ancestor, and it should still be in the process of being perfected. Looking at the endless formation diagram, Long Chen estimated that although he did not do anything, he could not break it. Therefore, without the permission of the Qiyu fiend ancestor, he could not enter the Xueqi fiend domain. Even in its incomplete state, it is already so strong. I guess when it is completed, even the ancestral god of the 5th era of the same level would not be able to break it in a short period of time. After all, this is a defensive formation diagram that the Qiyu fiend ancestor spent a long time building. In fact, it was not only the Qiyu fiend ancestor who did this. Now that the myriad worlds had stabilized, the elder gods all had the will to protect their own worlds. They had truly become one with their own worlds and their descendants. Therefore, the most important thing was to protect their own worlds. Basically, the elder gods of the 4th and 5th epochs, and even the majority of the elder gods of the 6th epochs, had already begun to set up formations to protect their own worlds. He believed that it wouldn't be long before even the 9th era ancestral gods would realize this. It was just that the spell formation they had set up definitely wouldn't be able to stop the 8th era ancestral gods and above. Of course, if it could defend against creator ancestral gods of the same level, it would also make his death reign less fragile. I should also protect the dragon sacrificial continent. The current myriad worlds aren't as peaceful as I imagined. Seeing this guardian array diagram, Long Chen recalled his own. Although the dragon sacrificial dragon continent was strong enough that ordinary ancestor gods might not be able to destroy it, it could still cause disasters to all living beings. In reality, fiend ancestor Qiyu was currently setting up an array diagram. As soon as Long Chen arrived, Long Chen saw a burly man standing in front of him. He was covered in an ancient and violent demonic aura. The violence in his body was similar to Pangu's, but it was more bloodthirsty and savage. Compared to Pangu, he wasn't someone to be trifled with. What's up? Perhaps because of the Doomsday War, no matter how violent fiend ancestor Qiyu was, he was still rather polite to Long Chen. Long Chen looked at this bull-headed giant with 4 arms and thought, under this guardian array diagram, I can't sense anything from this position. I have to go in. However, the other party has the consciousness to protect his own world, so he might not let me in. At first, Long Chen planned to watch from afar. Actually, if there was something more obvious, it wouldn't be able to escape his eyes. He didn't expect there to be this guardian array diagram. For a moment, Long Chen could only say, I saw this guardian array diagram of yours from afar and was curious, so I came to take a look. Fiend ancestor Qiyu breathed out 2 mouthfuls of white smoke and said, This is the ancient Xueqi demon diagram. If it succeeds, although it can't stop the 4th era ancestor god, the 5th era ancestor god won't be able to enter in a short period of time, let alone harm a single hair of my people. Long Chen said, That's really impressive. However, now that the myriad worlds are at peace, the enemy can't break the seal. Is there a need for such a strict defense? Actually, it was the endless stone ancestor and divine ancestor Xueqi that gave Long Chen such a bad premonition. Fiend ancestor Qiyu looked coldly at Long Chen and said indifferently, If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. I can only control myself, but I can't control others. You are too naive. I feel that there is no eternal peace or unity in this world because of the existence of external enemies. When there are no external enemies, internal strife is an eternal melody. After all, strife is the nature of life. If there is no strife, there will be no improvement, and there will be no elimination. A group without strife will be destroyed sooner or later if they suddenly encounter external enemies. Fiend ancestor Chio's words suddenly enlightened Long Chen. If that was the case, everything seemed to be explained. No matter how much they respected Long Chen, they couldn't control the strife in their nature. I understand. Many thanks. Fiend ancestor Qiyu didn't stand on ceremony and said, "Do as you please. I still need to perfect this diagram, so I won't accompany you." After saying that, he disappeared before Long Chen's eyes and went to perfect the ancient Jiuli demon diagram. Of course, he didn't have the intention to invite Long Chen to his Jiuli demon domain. His instinctive lack of security made Fiend ancestor Qiyu want to quickly perfect the ancient Jiuli demon domain. Although he couldn't enter, since Fiend ancestor Qiyu allowed him to do as he pleased, he walked around casually. He pretended to be looking at the ancient Jiuli demon domain, but in reality, he was observing the Jiuli demon domain. His vision penetrated the ancient Jiuli demon domain, but in reality, he couldn't see much. But it was better than nothing. After looking for a day or two and not discovering anything, if he stayed any longer, Fiend ancestor Qiyu would probably become suspicious. Long Chen could only leave and think of a solution. He desired to know if the time rule referred to the origin of the world or the origin dragon soul. However, at this time, he heard a piece of bad news. Dragon Sacrifice Continent. The Divine Dragon Continent was located at the core of the myriad worlds. It was shrouded in clouds and mist, and was simply elusive. When they were close to the Dragon Sacrifice Continent, Divine Ancestor Xueqi said, "You can go there by yourself. Lay low for a while. Those two kids are very noisy and running around everywhere. Of course, there will be people following them. Apart from Long Chen, there are also a few experts among them. They can discover me, but it will be difficult for them to discover you." All right, I've almost seen these two treasures. Anxiety was written all over the beautiful face of the Nightmare Ancestor God. When she stealthily approached the majestic draconic sacrificial continent, Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight stealthily hid in the darkness and fled back to his world as fast as he could. Nightmare Ancestor God was the 7th era's Ancestor God. She far surpassed the experts on the Dragon Sacrifice Continent. Lingxi was actually on the 4th floor of the Tower of Time. Li Xuanji, Mo Xiaolang, Kitten, and Xueqi were stationed here to oversee the Dragon Sacrifice Continent. Dragon Face and Dragon Scale, the two little dragons, were frolicking right under their noses. Mo Xiaolang didn't pay much attention to them. Most of the time, it was Dragon Face who was teasing Dragon Scale. What a beautiful child! What a surging vitality! When she saw the two of them, just as Divine Ancestor Xueqi had expected, Nightmare Ancestor God had completely lost control of herself. She couldn't help but want to attack them at any moment. However, because of her eagerness, no matter how excited she was, she still held it in. In the darkness, she fell into a state of obsession. The two children's cheerful laughter and every movement simply intoxicated her. Such beautiful children. Long Chen isn't qualified to have them. I'm the 7th era's Ancestor God. Only I can have them. Nightmare Ancestor God didn't realize that she was actually hypnotizing herself because of her eagerness. After lying dormant for a day, Divine Ancestor Xueqi had basically returned to his world and was safe enough. As for Mo Xiaolang and the others, it was still difficult for them to discover this hidden 7th era's Ancestor God. Let's compete to see who's faster, okay? Dragon Face secretly whispered into her brother's ear. Sure. Sister. How do we compete? Dragon Scale opened his eyes wide and looked at Dragon Face curiously. Dragon Face lowered her voice and said, "Let's compete to see who can reach the divine planet of destiny first. The first one wins, okay?" She actually didn't expect that Nightmare Ancestor God was hiding behind the divine planet of destiny. For her, the divine planet of destiny was a suitable place. No, it's a bit far. Dad and Mom both said that we can't go too far. Dragon Scale shook his head like a rattle drum. You're such a coward. Our dad is a peerless hero, and you're a man. How can you be so timid? If you're so timid, our dad will lose face. They'll say that you're a little girl and I'm a man. Dragon Face gave herself a thumbs up and pointed it down at Dragon Scale. No, I'm a hero too. I'm a man. Dragon Scale's eyes immediately turned red after being provoked by her. He said hurriedly, his cheeks puffed up. All right. You're a man. Let the competition begin. Dragon Face liked to play tricks. As she spoke, she immediately charged towards the divine planet of destiny with the ancient blood spirit dragon. Sister, you're cheating. Dragon Scale couldn't do anything about it. He could only turn into a void cosmic dragon and chase after her. He took a deep breath and vaguely used the power of time. Soon, he caught up with Dragon Face. Dragon Face was so scared that she squealed. In fact, both siblings were very competitive, just like Long Chen. So the competition was very interesting. Whoosh! 2 beams of light rushed towards the divine planet of destiny. I'm fast. I'm fast. Those who are slow will get their butts beaten. Dragon Face bared her fangs and brandished her claws. Li Xuanji glanced at them from the Draconic continent and followed them. However, Dragon Face and Dragon Face were too fast. She couldn't catch up with them in a short time. But she didn't care. She would catch up with them later and pull them back. Suddenly, Long Yen and Long Lin collided with a black whirlpool that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared. What Long Chen had received was the news that his precious daughter had disappeared. Chapter 34-37. When Long Chen left the Jiuli demonic realm and came back through the Death World, Lingxi and Li Xuanji had already gathered on the dragon sacrificial continent. They gathered at the Divine Star of Destiny. When Long Chen arrived, Mo Xiaolang said, they must have planned this. They hid for a long time before taking them away. Otherwise, it's impossible for them to disappear without a trace in such a short time. Although they couldn't have gone far, there were countless directions on the dragon sacrificial continent, so there was no way to know where to go. These 2 kids were Long Chen's biggest sore spot at the moment, so it was unimaginable how angry he was at the moment. Especially when he saw Lingxi and Li Xuanji's nervous and worried expressions, he was even angrier, and a cold killing intent was born in his heart. Lingxi and Li Xuanji also looked at Long Chen. No matter how bad things were now, they were still women who loved their kids deeply. Chen, no matter what, you must let them come back safely. Lingxi said this almost hoarsely. Let them pay with their blood. Li Xuanji's eyes were hazy. She had always been colder than Lingxi, especially when others bullied her kids. That was also her sore spot. Don't worry. You guys look around and inform me if there's any news. I'm going to find someone. For Long Chen and the others, this matter was too big. They needed Long Chen, the backbone, to deal with it. Lingxi and Li Xuanji were actually panicking at this moment. Okay. Xiaolang, see if they left any traces nearby. As long as you can identify who they are, they won't be able to escape. Mo Xiaolang was also nearby. He felt guilty for not taking care of the 2 kids, but now was not the time to blame himself. After all, no one was responsible. It was those who had evil intentions. The person Long Chen was looking for was none other than divine ancestor Ku Yi. If he wasn't in his own world, then he would be the biggest suspect. Even if he was here, he wouldn't be able to clear himself of suspicion. This was because he was the only one who had seen Long Chen's son and daughter. In a blink, Long Chen arrived at the Dark Knight Ghost Realm. What surprised him was that the Dark Knight Saint Ancestor was here. He pretended that nothing had happened and leisurely walked out of the Dark Knight Ghost Realm. When he saw Long Chen, he smiled and asked, the famous new ancestral dragon has such a vast world. Why have you come to my small place? Long Chen wasn't in the mood to joke with him. He was sure that it had something to do with Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. From the look in the ancestor's eyes, there was no mistaking it. His wife and children were his biggest weakness. Half of his body was filled with rage, while the other half was filled with murderous intent. Soul-slaying sword. Suddenly, the world essence, slaughter, appeared in his hand. The ancestor's soul was infused into the attack, and the blood-red power of the world essence swirled around the slaughter. Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight recognized the essence of the world. He hadn't expected Long Chen to do something like this. He cried out in alarm and hastily dodged to the side, summoning his world essence, the curtain of darkness, to defend himself. Whoosh! However, Long Chen's brutal slaughter had once again pierced through the curtain of darkness and the ancestral soul. Ancestor Dark Knight was gravely injured, and his ancestral soul was in excruciating pain. It was as if countless swords were piercing through his mind and will. That was a deadly pain that was difficult to endure. Are you dead? Long Chen reached out with his draconic claws, digging them deep into Saint Ancestor Dark Knight's neck. He raised Saint Ancestor Dark Knight in front of his eyes, the murderous intent in them almost piercing through him. You. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight was so agitated that he couldn't speak. He'd underestimated Long Chen, thinking that Long Chen wouldn't dare do anything to him under the Ancestral Deity Alliance's rule. I'll give you one chance. Bring my children to me, and I'll give you 3 breaths of time, starting now. The more enraged Long Chen became, the denser the draconic scales on his body. He was now a ferocious killing machine. This matter didn't concern the survival of the myriad realms, but it was something he couldn't tolerate. How laughable. Your children aren't with me, so how am I supposed to bring them to you? At this point, Long Chen couldn't be bothered to continue. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight was going to go back on his word. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight had the means to teleport from the draconic sacrificial continent to here. The myriad realms were only so big, and there were so many ancestor gods. There was bound to be a way to teleport, and it wouldn't be any slower than Long Chen passing through the death rain. Long Chen had given Saint Ancestor Dark Knight a chance, but the latter still insisted. Long Chen unsheathed carnage once more. This time, it was the blood wheel sword, condensed with raging draconic blood. As Saint Ancestor Dark Knight panicked, Long Chen released him and brandished his sword with both hands. Tens of thousands of slashes instantly pulverized Saint Ancestor Dark Knight's flesh and blood. Ah! Saint Ancestor Dark Knight screamed. He hadn't expected Long Chen to be so cruel. Truth be told, he was filled with regret. But since he'd made his decision, he wasn't the type to give up so easily. Moreover, this had already happened. He couldn't reveal it, or he'd be done for in the myriad realms. You dare kill me? Aren't you afraid of the Ancestor God Alliance punishing you? Saint Ancestor Dark Knight was still shouting. Swoosh! Long Chen's carnage pierced through the Dark Knight's curtain, forcing Saint Ancestor Dark Knight to continue suffering. The ancestral dragon of Slaughter's world origin was attacking his world origin, inflicting grievous torture on him. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight, of all the ancestor gods, you're the only one who knows that I have a son and a daughter. You're the only one who's ever seen them, and you're the only one who knows that I have a son and a daughter. You're the only one who's ever seen them, and you're the only one among the ancestor gods who knows that I have a son and a daughter. Long Chen's callous gaze, icy voice, and murderous sword made divine Ancestor Dark Knight regret his decision. However, he was now riding a tiger and unable to back down, so he braced himself. After all, it was a pleasure to make Long Chen so anxious. He shouted, "Then let me tell you, I have no idea what happened to your children. It has nothing to do with me. Long Chen, what do you think you can do to me? Do you know that I'm the creator of the Dark Knight Ghost Realm? I'm the origin of the world. Do you dare to kill me? If you kill me, these trillions of lives will die because of you. Do you dare to kill me?" Saint Ancestor Dark Knight was very relaxed. Long Chen had once risked his life for the sake of all life, and that was his weakness. Protecting the myriad worlds was his duty, and Long Chen valued the lives of all living beings. There was no way he would kill Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. Indeed, if Long Chen were to weigh the pros and cons of a world with trillions of lives, it would be difficult for him to deal with Dragon Face and Dragon Qilin. However, Long Chen wouldn't let this 8th era's ancestor god stumble. Indeed, I can't kill you, but I can make your life a living hell. You'll regret being alive if my son and daughter don't return. He wasn't boasting, but he would definitely do a good job. His murderous intent was simply too strong. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight was already gravely injured, and as long as Long Chen controlled his strength and didn't destroy the world's origin, he could torture Saint Ancestor Dark Knight to his heart's content. Lingxi had learned more powerful curses like the one used on the dragon god, so he could use them on Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. Long Chen was certain that this had something to do with him, so he was prepared to summon Lingxi and force him to submit. However, Saint Ancestor Dark Knight bellowed, "You're too arrogant. You're no longer the ruler of myriad worlds. You're just an insignificant character here. So what if you can defeat me? Do you think the Ancestral God Alliance will let you do as you please?" As Saint Ancestor Dark Knight roared, a beam of blue light came from afar. It was a ball of pure liquid water. This ball of water took the shape of a person in front of Long Chen. It was a blue-haired old man with a slightly stooped back. His eyes were calm and emotionless. Upon seeing this he said, "Long Chen, Hurry up and release Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. Clearly, this ancestor god wasn't too far away, and it was Saint Ancestor Dark Knight who had called him over. Long Chen naturally recognized this ancestor god. When his world had descended into the myriad worlds, Long Chen had paid him a visit, just like how he had paid a visit to devil ancestor Qiyu. Long Chen's world was the myriad celestial seas, and this person was the heavenly Wu water ancestor, a true sovereign of the laws of water. Azure ancestor god and the others were far inferior to the heavenly Wu water ancestor when it came to the laws of water. That's right, this seemingly simple ancestor god was a 5th-era ancestor god, which was why he occupied a position in the Ancestral God Alliance. He was one of the 100 or so 5th-era ancestor gods. I told you to release him. As fellow ancestor gods, we should live in harmony and help each other. You shouldn't have taken his life and destroyed his world, even if you once saved it. Long Chen knew that he wouldn't be able to do anything to Saint Ancestor Dark Knight if the heavenly Wu water ancestor acted. He knew that Saint Ancestor Dark Knight had called him over. He pondered for a moment. Now that someone from the Ancestral God Alliance has arrived, Saint Ancestor Dark Knight will have someone to rely on. It won't be very likely for him to force me. Therefore, it might be possible to let the Ancestral God Alliance deal with this. After all, he was the benefactor of all ancestor gods. He was the one who had been threatened, and the Ancestor God Alliance had no reason to not support him. Fine. With that, Long Chen released Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. Saint Ancestor Dark Knight hurriedly hid behind the heavenly Wu water ancestor. At this time, the heavenly Wu water ancestor frowned and said, Long Chen, what's wrong with you? The Ancestral God Alliance has just been established, and you're the first to cause trouble. You even forced Saint Ancestor Dark Knight to this extent. You're openly challenging the authority of the Ancestral God Alliance. The myriad worlds have their own rules. I can't break them just because you saved them. Chapter 34-38. In comparison, Long Chen preferred simple and violent methods. Although it didn't make sense for them to engage in a war of words here, Long Chen had to make things clear since Water Ancestor of Heavenly Wu had appeared. He explained the entire sequence of events to Water Ancestor of Heavenly Wu. Such a thing actually happened. The Heavenly Wu ancestor's attitude towards Long Chen softened a bit, but he was still vigilant. He asked Divine Ancestor Xueqi, Did you kidnap his children? Divine Ancestor Xueqi answered, Of course not, it's absolutely true. It's all his wild guesses. Think about it, if it was me, I wouldn't be so stupid if he knew it was me immediately. His words reminded Long Chen that Divine Ancestor Xueqi wasn't that stupid. The only possibility was that he was cooperating with someone else, and Long Yen and Long Lin might not be in his hands. As soon as Divine Ancestor Xueqi finished speaking, the Heavenly Wu ancestor asked Long Chen, Then tell me, do you have any evidence to prove that it's him? Long Chen definitely didn't have any evidence. He laughed. This Heavenly Wutong water ancestor was actually helping Saint Ancestor Dark Knight. That much was clear. He countered, If I had evidence, I would definitely make him suffer a fate worse than death. Senior, if the most important person to you was suddenly kidnapped, where would you find evidence? As I said, the evidence is that out of all the ancestor gods in the myriad of worlds, only he knows about the existence of my children. The Heavenly Wu ancestor asked, Then all the living beings in the myriad worlds should know. If they know, the ancestor god will know. Therefore, it's wrong for you to hurt him without evidence. Long Chen couldn't refute this. He knew that this was Divine Ancestor Xueqi's doing. This was his intuition, but the Heavenly Wu ancestor didn't believe his intuition. To Long Chen, the existence of the ancestor gods was troublesome, especially powerful ones like the Heavenly Wu ancestor. Facing them, Long Chen couldn't solve the problem with his strength. The strict hierarchy had trapped him at the bottom of the hierarchy of the ancestor gods. Moreover, if your children are naughty and mischievous, it's not impossible for them to escape and play in the myriad worlds. Heavenly Wu water ancestor said, That's impossible. My men saw them being taken away with their own eyes. At this time, Long Chen thought of something. Someone who could leave so easily in front of Li Xuanji, and who she couldn't even see clearly, should be above the 8th era's ancestral god. This made it even more certain that Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight had asked for help. After saying this, the Heavenly Wu Water Ancestor knew that Long Chen wouldn't give up. So he said, "Forget it, I can't take care of your matters. Let the Ancestral Gods Alliance take care of it. Our Ancestral Gods Alliance has been established. It's time to take care of things." Next, he must have sent a message to all the members of the Ancestral God Alliance. Before long, images of the Creator Ancestral Gods began to appear around Long Chen and Sacred Ancestor Night Crow. These were images of the 4th and 5th Era's Ancestral Gods, who had used the laws of the 4th and 5th Eras to form their own images. Although they weren't personally descending, they were close enough. In the blink of an eye, the projections of over 100 Ancestral Gods appeared in the surroundings. The 4th and 5th Era's Ancestral Gods appeared one after another. Even if it was just a projection, even if it was just a gaze, it was enough to intimidate Long Chen and Sacred Ancestor Night Crow. At this time, the Heavenly Wu Water Ancestor told everyone in the Ancestral God Alliance about the situation. It's just a small matter. However, it's also a matter between the Creator Ancestral Gods, so I'll have to ask everyone to make a decision. After speaking, the Heavenly Wu Water Ancestor retreated to the side. This was a matter between Long Chen and Sacred Ancestor Night Crow, so he didn't want to interfere. Long Chen didn't expect that this matter would actually alarm the 4th and 5th Era's Ancestral Gods. Perhaps in the eyes of these Ancestral Gods, this was indeed a trivial matter. They only came out because this matter involved Long Chen. In their eyes, Long Chen had always been a special existence. After not seeing each other for a while, the way the Creator Ancestral Gods looked at him changed slightly. Long Chen knew very well that this was an era of peace. The Creator Ancestral Gods didn't have any memories under the control of the Sky Devouring clan. Now that a new environment had appeared, their minds would change like children. They weren't as pure as they were when they first broke free from the curse. It's just a small matter. Heavenly Wu, it's very simple. You can just search for Sacred Ancestor Night Crow. Night Crow, are you willing to cooperate? One of the Creator Ancestral Gods was called the Chaotic Hole Sorcerer Ancestor. He was a Creator Ancestral God of the Witch race and was somewhat similar to the Primordial War Ancestor. The Witch race had left some of them in the Eternal Sacred Realm, and they were still on the Dragon Sacrificial Continent. However, the Chaotic Hole Sorcerer Ancestor was the true origin of the Witch race. His Chaotic Hole Sorcerer realm was also at the origin level. The Chaotic Hole Sorcerer Ancestor was the 4th Era's Ancestral God. From where Long Chen was standing, he looked like a cloud of gray mist. Of course I'm willing to return to the Chaotic Hole Sorcerer Ancestor. At this time, Sacred Ancestor Night Crow was very proud of himself. He forcefully condensed into a human form. No matter where Sacred Ancestor Heavenly Wu searched, he was very frank. After a thorough search, only a large area of the surrounding territory and all of Sacred Ancestor Night Crow's inner world were found. It's obvious that it's not Sacred Ancestor Night Crow. That's why, Long Chen, it's best that you don't mess around before we get to the bottom of this. The myriad realms of today aren't as chaotic as they used to be. Ancestor Gods aren't allowed to destroy or even destroy the origin of other Ancestor Gods' worlds. Since you're concerned about your children, we won't punish you. However, we won't allow this to happen again. We're currently formulating a punishment law. I hope you're not the first to be punished. After all, you've contributed the most to the myriad realm's current state. The voice came from another Ancestral God. Of course, the one who dared to speak at this time was definitely the 4th Era's Ancestral God. He was called the Common People's Emperor Ancestor, and his world was the Common People's Imperial Domain. Among the 4th Era's Ancestral Gods, he had the most imperial temperament. His law was the Tao of the Great Emperor, and he was unfathomable. His voice was majestic, and his image was also sitting on a golden throne, looking extremely dignified. The Common People's Emperor Ancestor is right. Don't mess around anymore. It's true that you used to be the Lord of Myriad Realms. Before the epoch, your Dragon Sacrificial Continent was also the ruler of Myriad Realms. But now, the situation is different. The Ancestral God Alliance shoulders the heavy responsibility of protecting and rebuilding Myriad Realms. If you're sensible, you won't make things difficult for us. The third Ancestral God who spoke was called Saint Ancestor Kitagarbha. He was bald and dressed in a white robe. He had delicate features and a deep gaze, like a reclusive expert. His casual words could enlighten the deaf and make people yearn for him. He was also the fourth era's ancestral god. The world that was born from the origin of the world had the most special name, the realm of all living beings. None of the three fourth era's ancestral gods stood on Long Chen's side, which surprised Long Chen quite a bit. It turned out that the ancestral gods had changed so quickly. It had only been a few days, but the matter of him saving myriad realms had passed just like that. In order to reorganize the laws of myriad realms, Long Chen, who had great potential, had become the target of hatred at this time. At least, this was the case for the chaotic whole sorcerer ancestor, the mortal people's emperor ancestor, and saint ancestor Kitagarbha. Long Chen saw a certain degree of fear and displeasure in their eyes. Obviously, because of his great contribution, they wanted to suppress him a little. However, there were also some who spoke up for him, such as the primordial war ancestor. At this time, he stood his ground and said, Long Chen's reasoning is reasonable. After all, he has a grudge against Saint Ancestor Xueqi. Long Chen, don't worry. We will immediately inform the myriad realms. Whoever secretly kidnapped your children will be given a lighter punishment if they hand them over in time. But if they are found out, the Ancestral God Alliance will definitely not forgive them. We will also take care of this matter. Now that the myriad realms have just stabilized, anyone who causes trouble should be punished. Truth be told, Long Chen was infuriated right now. He felt that he had saved a bunch of heartless and unscrupulous people. It had only been such a short period of time since the Doomsday War. They probably hadn't forgotten the pain of the curse. However, in such a short period of time, there were actually people who wanted to forget the peace of the myriad worlds. Who was the one who fought for it? If it were not for the fact that the primordial war ancestor was still speaking up for him, he really could not hold it in anymore. But he definitely could not fight. If he really fought against the Ancestral God Alliance, he would truly lose. Long Chen chuckled coldly and loudly said, Everyone, no matter what, I've witnessed today that some people really are up to no good. I won't go into specifics, but when it comes to my children, I'll still say the same thing. I don't usually cause trouble, but if anyone dares to cause trouble for me and touches my reverse scale, I won't let them off, no matter who they are. Then he turned to Saint Ancestor Xueqi and said coldly, You don't need to act crazy in front of me. Even a fool knows that this matter has something to do with you. If it isn't here, it can only mean that you have asked someone else to do it. The myriad realms are only so big. You can easily find anyone who is close to you. Don't think that you can hide from this. He had to make his stance clear. No matter how strong the ancestor gods were, he wasn't a pushover. It didn't mean that he was just a nobody among the ancestor gods and didn't have the right to speak. After all, the Doomsday War still had some influence. After saying that, he directly opened the death rain and left. After Long Chen finished speaking, the creator gods looked at each other in dismay. Some didn't say anything and remained silent, but there were also those like the black hole wizard ancestor who sneered and said, This little guy doesn't understand. Times are different now, and everyone has to look forward. Although he saved the myriad worlds, if he wants to become the overlord of the myriad worlds, he still has to ask for my permission. Disperse. The Chaos Ancestor God and the others felt that there was no point and left. Only then did the crowd gradually disperse. Saint Ancestor Xueqi didn't expect to cause such a huge commotion, so he was very confused. Chapter 34-39. The reason Long Chen had left was not because he had given up, but because the primordial war ancestor had asked him to go to the primitive warship. Among the fourth epoch's ancestor gods, Long Chen's relationship with the primordial ancestor had been slightly better. After all, they were related to the chaos divine might. But now, it was the primordial war ancestor who had been friends with Long Chen. Because of their friendship in the Doomsday War, the primordial war ancestor was more attentive to Long Chen. So during their conversation, the primordial war ancestor had asked him to come alone. After arriving, the primordial war ancestor was already waiting for Long Chen outside the primitive warship. I asked you to come here. First, I was afraid that you would get agitated and quarrel with the other ancestor gods. That wouldn't be good for you, the primordial war ancestor said helplessly. Long Chen said, It's not that I want to, but I'm not used to it. But it's understandable. After the calamity, things have settled down. It's understandable that they want to establish a world without special privileges. Although I have contributed greatly to the worlds, if I have special privileges, the other ancestor gods will not be convinced. But there are indeed some ancestor gods who specifically target me. You can understand that. I'm angry because these existences are too ungrateful. Those people were clearly worried that Long Chen would become an even stronger ancestor dragon in the future. He would be above them and suppress all the ancestor gods with his authority. That was a possibility. The primordial war ancestor said, "I can't stop them. There are all kinds of birds in a big forest. Actually, if it weren't for what happened today, you wouldn't have such a conflict with them. Let's talk about a solution." Regarding Long Yen and Long Lin, Long Chen couldn't hold back for even a moment. He could only keep his serious dissatisfaction with the ancestor gods' alliance in his heart. "Senior, please help me," Long Chen said respectfully. He needed the primordial war ancestor's help. Of course, this was also the reason why the primordial war ancestor had asked him to come. When Long Chen asked, he nodded and said, "Don't worry, this matter has already spread to all the elder gods in the infinite worlds. I've instructed some familiar elder gods to help me search. If there's any news, I'll inform you immediately." Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight must be working with another elder god. That other elder god should be from the 7th era or higher. That's a much smaller target. Someone who would do something like this must have some sort of grudge against me. Still, I can't think of anyone from the 7th era or higher who has a grudge against me. The primordial battle ancestor said, "I'm aware of that as well. I'll take you there as soon as there's a suspect. You can't be impatient right now, or you'll fall into Sacred Ancestor Kuei Ye's trap. He might even want to use the Ancestral God Alliance to get rid of you. The more you oppose the Ancestral God Alliance, the happier he will be." "Thank you." Long Chen sincerely thanked the primordial war ancestor. He was sincerely helping him. The primordial war ancestor was right. Although he was a little disappointed in the Ancestral God Alliance and some of the elder gods, there was no need for him to lose his sense of propriety. He just needed to remember these grievances. Infinite worlds. Future. Long Chen's interest waned when he thought of these two words. The situation was a little different from what he had imagined. It seemed like he had already saved the infinite worlds, but they were still in a state of decline. Especially among the ancestor gods, there were all kinds of personalities. Most of them were selfish. How could they maintain a stable myriad of worlds? This was indeed a difficult problem. He was thinking that it would be great if he had the strength of the primordial blood spirit dragon. Only then would he have true freedom. Instead, he was stuck in an awkward situation. Power was still his goal. The Ancestor God Alliance gave him an even greater reason to become stronger. Nightmare Continent. The Nightmare Ancestor God could create countless dream realms. Those dream realms were the purple smoke in the air, but they were actually tiny purple water droplets. Each purple water droplet was a dream realm. When the Nightmare Ancestor God returned, there were already more than 100 million dream realms on the Nightmare Continent. Not all of them were nightmares. There were also sweet dreams. If mortals happened to come into contact with these dream realms, they would fall into them and even spend the rest of their lives in them. In the depths of these countless dream realms, there was an inconspicuous purple water droplet. Within the purple water droplet was a dream realm. Within the dream realm was an imaginary world. It was surrounded by huge purple bubbles that were very soft. In the sky were sparkling purple stars, and on the ground were purple pearls. "It's so beautiful." Long Yen picked up the largest pearl among the countless pearls and held it in her hand. She squinted one eye and looked at the purple pearl with the other. Her tiny mouth was agape. "Sister, I'm scared." Long Lin hid behind her and looked at the strange surroundings. His eyes were very vigilant, but because he was too young, he was still a little afraid of this unfamiliar environment. "Don't be afraid. It was the bad guy who took us away. However, Daddy will appear in a while. When he appears, he will definitely smack that bad guy's butt and make her beg for mercy." Long Yen threw down the purple pearl and placed her tiny hands on her hips as she spoke confidently. At this moment, one of the huge purple bubbles approached them. With a pop, it exploded, and a beautiful woman walked out. She even sought other ancestor gods to copulate with her. This person was called the Nightmare Ancestor God, and it's very likely that Ancestor Dark Night was related to her. In truth, the infinite worlds were only so big. If someone did something bad, there was no way they could hide it. The ancestor gods had just arrived here and had lost their memories, so they didn't understand this point. They were too inexperienced. That was why Long Chen could resist the urge to wait here. When he heard about the Nightmare Ancestor God, he was almost certain. This is an ancestor god of the 7th era. I won't be easy to deal with. I hope that you can accompany me, ancestor god. No problem. There's no time to lose. The two passed through the death rain and quickly arrived at the Nightmare Continent. As the name suggested, this was a world surrounded by nightmares. It was extremely sinister. Ancestor Dark Night, I've arrived at the Nightmare Continent. Long Chen said to Ancestor Dark Night from afar. Ancestor Dark Night exclaimed. Chapter 3440. War Ancestor, this is most likely the place, Long Chen said. The primordial war ancestor knew that Long Chen was anxious, so he stared at the Nightmare Continent and shouted, Ancestor God Nightmare, come out. Given his power as a 4th epic ancestor god, he could naturally cause the entire Nightmare Continent to tremble. Countless purple dreamlands shattered before his eyes, and a large number of mortals returned to reality. Hearing this voice naturally impacted the ancestor god greatly. The primordial war ancestor's eyes were even larger than the Nightmare Continent, and there was nowhere for the ancestor god Nightmare to hide. Who is it? In the blink of an eye, the ancestor god appeared in a sorry state. When she saw Long Chen and the primordial war ancestor, her eyes widened. Long Chen was fine, and she wasn't afraid, but the primordial war ancestor was a 4th epic ancestor god. From her panicked reaction, the primordial war ancestor was certain that it was this fellow. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to send those 2 children out. I guarantee that they are unharmed. If anything happens to them, the Ancestral Gods Alliance will punish you and consign you to eternal damnation. The primordial war progenitor's words were like hammers pounding on the Nightmare Elder God's head, deafening her eyes. She was still in a daze, and after a breath's time, she hurriedly waved her hands and said, What are you talking about? What 2 children? I didn't touch them. Don't you dare insult our intelligence, Elder God Nightmare. In truth, upon seeing this woman, Long Chen's killing intent was no less than when he faced sacred ancestor Xueqi. But she was the 7th epic ancestor god, and he didn't know how strong she was, so he was a little worried. Also, with the primordial war ancestor by his side, he wanted to see Long Yan and Long Lin more than anything else. In the face of the Nightmare Elder God's shameless act, the primordial war ancestor waved his hand lightly. Instantly, the countless purple water droplets on the Nightmare Continent exploded. Almost all the dreamlands disappeared. Many mortals and gods were trapped in the countless dreamlands, and most of them fell from the sky. In the crowd, Long Chen instantly saw his son and daughter. The 2 children were looking around, and when they saw Long Chen, they immediately cheered up and ran towards Long Chen excitedly. Daddy, she's bullying us. She's using some sort of rule to hypnotize us. She wants us to call her mother. Tui. That shameless woman is too ugly. Daddy, help me beat her up. Long Yan shouted as she ran. She had almost grown up. She understood these things very well. Nightmare, hypnosis. Of course Long Chen understood. The Nightmare Elder God was extremely unwilling to see the 2 children run away just like that. But with the primordial warlord here, there was nothing he could do to stop them. Even though he was unwilling, he could only endure it and watch as the 2 children returned to Long Chen's arms. War Ancestor, are they in trouble? Long Chen was worried that the Nightmare Elder God had done something to the 2 children that the primordial war ancestor could see more clearly. They are terrifyingly talented. They won't fall for it so easily. Don't worry, they're fine. The primordial warlord checked and told Long Chen. Hearing this, Long Chen finally relaxed. Your mother misses you. Go back and accompany them. Long Chen first sent the 2 children back to the Death Realm. Lingxi, Li Xuanji, and the others were waiting there. Daddy, you can't let her go. If you had come a little later, we might have been changed by her and completely forgotten about you, Long Lin said very calmly. Long Lin said very calmly. After experiencing this crisis, these two children had grown a little, especially Long Lin. The part of his personality that belonged to Long Chen had already begun to show joy. Is that so? Long Chen sent them back first. After closing the death realm, he looked at the Nightmare Elder God with a blood-red gaze. Just as Long Lin said, what the Nightmare Elder God had done was not something that could be forgiven. What she had done was no different from wanting to kill the two children. There was no room for discussion after angering Long Chen. With a whoosh, Long Chen took out the World Origin Massacre and held it in his hand. Without another word, he headed for the Nightmare Elder God. Long Chen. The primordial warlord stopped him and said, "That's not very appropriate. No matter what, the children are safe and sound. I'm not saying that you can't vent your anger, but the situation is a little different now. Since they want to establish the Ancestor Gods Alliance, they need to make the Ancestor Gods Alliance effective. A new broom sweeps clean. This is the time to show the Ancestor Gods Alliance's usefulness. They made a mistake this time, so I think it's best to punish them through the Ancestor Gods Alliance." It was not that Long Chen did not understand what the primordial warlord was saying. However, he was not used to it. All these years, he had been free to seek revenge. Why did he have to be restricted by the Ancestor Gods Alliance at the final moment? He only wanted to seek justice for the children. He did not blame the primordial warlord. In fact, he was doing it for his own good. The waters of the Ancestor Gods Alliance were getting deeper and deeper. If he wanted peace, it was best to stay away from this vortex. Besides, even if you can defeat her, you can't kill her. With that said, Long Chen had an idea. At least with the primordial warlord present, it was not appropriate to make a move, nor could he truly punish the Nightmare Elder God. After all, she was a creation elder god. She would only die when the world origin was destroyed. Leave it to me. I will report this matter to the Ancestor Gods Alliance. Everyone can discuss the punishment for the Nightmare Elder God. All right. Long Chen wanted to see what kind of punishment they could come up with. The primordial warlord reprimanded the Nightmare Elder God. However, the Nightmare Elder God did not seem afraid. She looked like a dead pig that did not fear boiling water. Later on, the two were preparing to leave when the Nightmare Elder God laughed. She said to Long Chen alone, "What can you do? This is not your era. It is the era of the Ancestor Gods Alliance. You do not have the ability to protect these two children. One day they will be mine." She was challenging Long Chen's bottom line, causing Long Chen's killing intent to erupt once again. He took a deep look at this woman. The thing he hated the most in his life was someone using his family to threaten him. Even if he couldn't kill her, Long Chen decided that he would definitely make her suffer a severe punishment. The primordial warlord left to fight for Long Chen. As for Long Chen, he returned to the death rain. At this moment, Long Yen and Long Lin seemed to have forgotten what had happened. They were having fun. Upon seeing Long Chen return, Long Yen hurriedly ran over and asked, "Daddy, how was it? Did you make that ugly woman's butt blossom? I want to smash her mouth. It's so infuriating." Faced with his daughter's look of anticipation, Long Chen was too embarrassed to say no. This was not in his character. He, who had once repaid kindness and grudges, was now being bullied by his own children. How could he still be restrained by the rules? How could he still be a father? Let her go for a few days. In a few days, if no one makes a move, Daddy will. Long Lin was unhappy and said, "Why do you need a few days? Daddy, this is not your character." Even this child knew that this was not him. Long Chen did not say a word and let them play. However, he knew very well that this time, he had to take revenge. At the very least, he could not let the two children feel that there was something he could not do or someone he did not dare to touch. I want to see what kind of punishment this so-called Ancestor God Alliance can come up with. Mo Xiaolang crossed his arms. This time, because it was the two children who were being targeted, everyone was extremely angry. If it doesn't work, I won't be able to take it lying down. Li Xuanji was usually very amiable, but this time, she was infuriated, especially when a woman came to snatch the child she had painstakingly left behind. When the time comes, let's make her suffer. Lingxi, Can you cast the lifetime heart-eroding curse? Asked Long Chen. No problem. I just don't know if the 7th epoch's ancestor god will be effective, said Lingxi without hesitation. Then let her have a taste of it and learn from her mistakes. The lifetime heart-eroding curse was something that even Long Chen found terrifying. Boss, if the Ancestor God Alliance doesn't do anything, we won't be afraid of being suppressed by the Ancestor God Alliance. Kitten had been born in that era, so he knew that these ancestor gods had been scheming against each other before the epoch. However, they had been suppressed by the 10 ancestor dragons, so they did not dare act recklessly. There's nothing to be afraid of. If this goes on, there will be conflict sooner or later. If they target me, they can't blame me for being above them in the future and giving them a hard time. Therefore, they had to wait a few days to see if they could punish Ancestor God Nightmare. However, we missed out on the main culprit, and that is Ancestor Dark Knight. Without a doubt, he was the one who instigated Ancestor Nightmare. However, the Ancestor God Alliance clearly will not punish him without evidence. Therefore, this fellow can get away scot-free for offending us. Long Chen said with a cold gaze. Boss, just say what you want to do. In any case, I feel that being restricted in every way isn't like you, said Kitten fearlessly. Let him have a taste of the lifelong heart-eroding curse, said Long Chen. Everyone had already expected this. There was no way to kill him, but it would be even more terrifying than killing him. As long as Lingxi did not remove the curse, he would forever be tormented. All right. Just like that, they made this bold decision. As for how to resolve the situation, Long Chen could not be bothered to think too much about it. Logically speaking, they should have quietened down and not offended a behemoth like the Ancestor God Alliance. However, the one they had offended was his precious child. This was intolerable. In any case, the Ancestor Gods have no evidence that we did it. This time, Long Chen and Lingxi were the only ones to go. They immediately went to the Dark Knight Ghost Domain. Ancestor Dark Knight was recuperating there. He had finally recovered a little, but he felt very uneasy. He had just greeted Ancestor God Nightmare, and it seemed that the Ancestor God Alliance was discussing how to punish her. Ancestor Dark Knight was also very nervous. When Lingxi appeared, she had black hair and black eyes. She was in an extremely cold and sinister state, even evil. Even her clothes had been dyed black by the demonic energy of the curse. Compared to her previous ethereal self, Lingxi's current state was too much of a shock. On the other hand, one could see just how terrifying the lifetime heart-devouring curse was. On the black ring, a pure black scorpion formed from countless curse particles was born. There were sinister bloodlines all over its body, and even Long Chen could feel the terrifying evil aura from the scorpion's birth. Hiss! The black scorpion, the lifetime heart-devouring curse, passed through the shadow of death and tore through Forefather Dark Knight's world essences. It burrowed into them, then into the origin of the world, and finally scattered into countless fragments that fused with Forefather Dark Knight's ancestral soul. This is the God-cursed demon Forefather's curse. It penetrates deep into the world essences and becomes one with them. Not even the other Fourth Era's ancestor gods can remove it. Once he's hit, he won't be able to escape unless I remove it. He'll suffer for the rest of his life, unable to escape. Chin, isn't this too much of a vengeance? Long Chen said it won't. This kind of ancestor god should be taught a lesson. We'll remove it when he knows his place. In any case, Long Chen didn't mean to curse him for all eternity. Despicable people should be intimidated by the method they used. All right. It didn't take long before sacred ancestor Kuye's earth-shattering screams rang out from within the shadow of death. He was in excruciating pain because the curse had seeped into the origin of the world. Even if he tore his body apart, he wouldn't be able to escape. His screams spoke of endless pain. Long Chen didn't show any mercy this time. He felt that he was too obedient, and that the ancestor gods were starting to treat him less and less seriously. He needed to intimidate them. Long Chen withdrew the shadow of death and returned to Death's reign, leaving no trace behind. Forefather Dark Knight was shrouded in the curtain of darkness, and a scorpion curse rune flickered in the center of the curtain. Every time it flickered, Forefather Dark Knight felt heart-wrenching pain. Ah, hoo. Forefather Dark Knight was tossing and turning in the starry sky. He was on the verge of insanity, and his blood-curdling screams alarmed all living beings. Something's wrong. The entire Dark Knight ghost realm was in a frenzy. Many ancestor gods in the vicinity rushed over when they heard the screams. When they saw Forefather Dark Knight's pale face and pained expression, they didn't know what was going on. It's Long Chen. He must have come to take revenge on me. Help me call Waterfather Celestial, I want his life. Forefather Dark Knight endured the pain and screamed at the top of his lungs. All right. The ancestor god beside him called Water Ancestor Tian Wu. Not long after, Water Ancestor Tian Wu arrived. Seeing that divine ancestor Xueqi couldn't stop, this fifth-era ancestor god checked for a long time but couldn't find anything. He said, "This should be similar to the curse we suffered last time. It must be a curse. Therefore, it should be Long Chen's doing." Of course. Long Chen's wife, Lingxi, has obtained the inheritance of the divine curse devil ancestor. She's an expert in curses. She's the only one who can do such a thing. The ancestor god said. The evidence is irrefutable. Forefather Dark Knight, you have to get justice for me. Help me capture Long Chen and ask that Lingxi to help me remove this curse. Forefather Dark Knight's voice was hoarse from the pain, and it even sounded like he was about to cry. Forefather Dark Knight looked around. Actually, he was quite depressed. Because of Forefather Dark Knight, the Ancestral God Alliance was in an unstable state. Of course, in his opinion, Long Chen was too stubborn. Long Chen, you dare to attack Forefather Dark Knight behind the back of the Ancestral God Alliance. Hurry up and come here. Otherwise, your sins will be grave. Forefather Dark Knight informed Long Chen. In fact, Long Chen was in the death world. It was obvious that Forefather Dark Knight was the one who abducted his children, but he refused to admit it. In any case, Long Chen didn't have any evidence, so he acted as if he didn't know anything. He cried out in alarm, "Forefather Dark Knight, you can't slander me. It's not Forefather Dark Knight who abducted my children. I misunderstood him before, so why would I take revenge on him now? If Forefather Dark Knight is injured, then it has absolutely nothing to do with me." Now it was his turn to act. He was too familiar with it. Hurry up and come here. The evidence is irrefutable. Don't try to deny it. Forefather Dark Knight's voice was filled with anger, but Long Chen wasn't afraid. He smiled and said, "This matter has nothing to do with me. Why should I be interrogated like a mortal? I already said that if something happened to him, it really has nothing to do with me. I just had a conflict with him, so if I attacked him, it would be too obvious. Am I that stupid? Oh right. Didn't Forefather Dark Knight see the enemy? Why doesn't he know who injured him? That's too useless. Forefather Dark Knight really couldn't do anything to him. Then I'll ask the Ancestral God Alliance how to punish you. If you don't come over, you'll definitely be convicted." Forefather Dark Knight felt that he didn't need to deal with this matter. He summoned the Ancestral God Alliance again and had the ancestor gods appear. In the blink of an eye, images of the 4th and 5th era ancestor gods appeared everywhere. They saw Forefather Dark Knight's miserable state. Of course, Long Chen had to come over at this time. He calmly faced everyone. "What happened?" Primal War Ancestor secretly asked. "It's just a little pain." What do you want the primordial ancestor gods of the 4th era to do? Kill him? Do you still want to save face? This time you provoked him. If you continue to be stubborn, your fate will be worse than this. But my curse! Sacred Ancestor Xueqi cried even more miserably. Endure it slowly. Otherwise you can beg him. If you really want him to be abandoned and suppressed by the primordial ancestor gods, you'll have to wait for at least 1,000 years. When everyone gradually forgets about the Doomsday War. Sacred Ancestor Xueqi finally understood that he was the real fool. Previously, the chaotic Whole Ancestor and the others suppressed Long Chen purely because they were worried that Long Chen would be too arrogant and despotic and break the rules of the myriad worlds. If they really did anything to Long Chen, there would definitely be more ancestor gods who wouldn't agree. I'll beg him. This was the only way out. Sacred ancestor Xueqi was extremely unwilling. However, this terrible torture was like a poisonous bug tearing at his body. The feeling was terrifying. Sacred ancestor Xueqi wouldn't be able to endure it for even a day, let alone an eternity. After returning from the death world, the anger in his heart had dissipated by a large margin. After a series of tests, Long Chen realized that the primordial ancestor gods weren't too despicable. Some of them still spoke up for him. In fact, he didn't have to worry about those primordial ancestor gods truly targeting him for the next 1,000 years. Of course, as time passed, the gratitude would eventually fade. If he didn't become stronger, he would always be stepped on by others. It didn't matter to him, but he was now shouldering the responsibility of the trillions of divine dragons in the dragon sacrificial continent. He had to stand tall. Only then could the divine dragons live and pass on their legacies. Therefore, his strength wasn't just a personal matter. In his eyes, the dragon sacrificial continent was prosperous and prosperous. Trillions of divine dragons were soaring in the sky. Dragon Yen and Dragon Lin had the temperament of a child. At this moment, they had already forgotten about the previous calamity and were having a great time. Long Chen was very clear about what the future would be like. The first step was to find the world source and origin dragon soul of the void cosmic dragon. However, before that, he had to confirm one thing: the follow-up to the nightmare ancestor god. Divine ancestor Yen Yi had been subdued, but this nightmare ancestor god was a ticking time bomb. He had to subdue her. This would have to wait for the Ancestral Gods Alliance's decision. Not long after, the primordial war ancestor said, "Long Chen, I've tried my best in this aspect. However, the Ancestral Gods Alliance has just been established and doesn't have a strict disciplinary mechanism. Regarding the matter of the nightmare ancestor god, the Ancestral Gods Alliance has decided to lock her up for 1,000 years so that she can repent." Just 1,000 years. It's that simple. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye as Long Chen stayed on the 4th floor of the Tower of Time. Yes. The only thing that's not too bad is that I'll imprison her. I'll give her a rather uncomfortable environment. I'm now heading for the Nightmare Continent. I'll arrive in about an hour. I understand. Thank you, War Ancestor. You're welcome. 1,000 years was really meaningless. After she came out, the trouble she caused would continue. She didn't feel like she was being taught a lesson at all. However, the primordial war ancestor's last words were interesting. He was the one who imprisoned her, and he told me that he would arrive in an hour. Doesn't that mean that this hour is mine? If I move quickly, I can let her experience the taste of the lifetime heart corrosion curse. At that time, she will be imprisoned again and suffer for at least 1,000 years. On the side, Li Xuanji and Lingxi hated this child who had stolen their treasure the most. They were looking forward to seeing what would happen to her. A woman's desire for revenge was terrifying, especially in this aspect. At this moment, even they were astonishingly unified. We still have an hour. Today, let's see how powerful the 7th era's ancestral god is. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen led everyone to the death realm. Among them, Lingxi, Kitten, and Xueqi stayed in the death realm. Li Xuanji couldn't help but want to participate. However, the 7th era's ancestral god was dangerous after all. Long Chen let it enter his body and fight as one. His helper was Mo Xiaolang, who had the most tacit understanding with him. Mo Xiaolang, who had made great progress in the doomsday. After we subdue her, you'll cast the lifetime heart-eroding curse. Get ready, Long Chen said to Lingxi. That's a long time. I can prepare the biggest one. Let's see if she dares to take Yen and Lin away. Lingxi said furiously. As for Li Xuanji, there was no need to even mention her. Even she wanted to slaughter this nightmare ancestor god. Although they only had one child, they both loved these two children. In fact, Lingxi liked Long Lin more because Long Yen was too mischievous and gave Lingxi a headache. As for Li Xuanji, she felt that the lively and adorable Long Yen was more likable. After exchanging glances with Mo Xiaolang, Long Chen and him arrived at the Nightmare Continent. This time there was no need to hide. After arriving at the Nightmarish Continent, Long Chen said in a clear voice, "Nightmare Ancestral God, There's no need to wait for the Ancestral God's Alliance's punishment. If you have the guts, come out. We'll settle our own grudges. What? Nightmare Ancestral God didn't expect him to come. She was shocked. Actually, she was also waiting for the Ancestral God's Alliance's decision. Chapter 34-43. The Nightmare Ancestor God was not a demon. Otherwise, the Nightmare Continent would be a world of spiders. The giant purple spider divine body that she was currently displaying was actually a manifestation of the natural order. It was different from a true demon's true form. However, even if it was just a law, the incarnation of the ancestral god of the Seventh Era was already huge. It was even bigger than Mo Xiaolong's son devouring demonic wolf and Long Chen's ancient blood spiritual dragon. A purple spider with 16 sharp, long legs and many purple crystals on them appeared in front of Long Chen and Mo Xiaolang. The purple crystals might make it gorgeous, but the appearance of the spider was really unapproachable. Below her mouth, near her chest, was the largest purple crystal. It was almost half the size of the spider's head. That was the origin of the world. This purple crystal was called Meng Xian. If this dream heart was destroyed, it would be the end of it. However, Long Chen's goal today was to implant the lifelong heart-eroding curse into this dream heart, allowing her to experience a different 1,000 years. Today, you were the one who provoked me. I can make you pay a heavy price. After we fight, life and death will be forgotten. The Nightmare Ancestor God's voice was ghostly, echoing in their ears like ants crawling into their ears. Long Chen gripped the slaughter sword, covered in dragon scales, and his murderous aura shot into the sky. Mo Xiaolang transformed into the sun-devouring direwolf, surrounded by the ancestral flames. Under its nurturing, the ancestral flames were becoming more and more mature, gradually approaching the level of their former selves. Their killing power was also greater. Therefore, only one of them had the origin of the world, and the other only had the power of the 8th Era Ancestor God, but they still dared to challenge the 7th Era Ancestor God. Almost at the same time, Mo Xiaolang and the Nightmare Ancestor God attacked at the same time. In the distance, Mo Xiaolang suddenly spewed out many ancestral fires. If the primeval sacrificial fire was counted as 3, then there were 10 kinds of ancestral fires. The ancestral fires formed a wolf of fire several times larger than the spider and rushed toward the spider. Little Wolf's ancestral flame has already reached such a level. Even Long Chen was shocked by its power. Among the crowd, Mo Xiaolong's potential was the closest to Long Chen's. In fact, his potential was limitless. Humph! The nightmare world. The purple spider suddenly turned into thousands of phantoms. What could be seen was that these spiders instantly spread out and weaved in the void around them. In a very short time, they formed a web, forming a nightmare world, trapping Long Chen and Mo Xiaolang within. It seemed that he did not want Long Chen to escape at all. They were surrounded by a web of spiders, and within the web was a new world, the world of nightmares. In this world, the Nightmare Ancestor God's nightmare rules were everywhere, constantly attacking Long Chen's and Mo Xiaolong's souls. At least in terms of mental state, they were more severely suppressed than usual. In this nightmare world, even the power of Mo Xiaolong's flames weakened a lot, and even his mental state was in a very unstable state. In their eyes, countless nightmares flashed past as if they had experienced them personally. It was so real that it caused a huge shock to their souls. It was not easy to keep calm at such a time. Yin and Yang separation. At this time, the Nightmare Ancestor God continued to cast another rule. This rule swept out and turned into a spider web, protecting the Nightmare Ancestor God in the middle, creating a kind of Yin and Yang separation. After the Yin and Yang separation was formed, Mo Xiaolong's endless ancestral fire bombarded the Nightmare Ancestor God's Yin and Yang separation. Boom! Under the terrifying onslaught of the ancestral flame, the Yin-Yang separation had firmly protected the Nightmare Elder God, allowing him to remain completely unscathed. In addition, he had already unleashed his nightmare world to the maximum, greatly affecting both Long Chen and Yi Cixi. Such ability, as expected of the 7th Era Ancestor God. I've underestimated her. After realizing this and recalling the experience of Long Yan and Long Chen, The anger in his heart burned even stronger. It was this hot blood and murderous intent that allowed Long Chen to calm down in the midst of countless nightmares. Fatal Dragon Diagram. After calming down, it was time to unleash its fatal attack. This was the attack that had once destroyed the devouring dragon servant. Long Chen gripped the blood-red longsword in his hand, and the sword swept out in all directions, rapidly drawing out a fatal dragon diagram in the void. As the strokes of the fatal dragon diagram increased, the same diagram appeared on the yin and yang separation of the nightmare ancestor god. A majestic, divine dragon totem suddenly appeared. Of course, it was a primordial blood spirit dragon, after all, so its murderous intent was still quite terrifying. Bzzz. The fatal dragon diagram imprinted itself on the yin and yang separation. Puny insect. Nightmare had only managed to say 2 words when her edicts were instantly overwhelmed by the life-seizing dragon diagram. The life-seizing dragon diagram struggled free and plunged headfirst into the enormous spider's body. Ah! The nightmare ancestor god finally experienced the power of the fatal dragon diagram. Otherwise, the yin and yang separation would have blocked more than half of it, and it would have been even more troublesome. However, at this time, Mo Xiaolang gave it his all. After failing the first time, he used the ancestral flame at the core of his second attempt, bringing with it billions of godfire, to form a giant blazing sun. In fact, the flames were so close to doomsday that they slammed viciously into the spider. A double blow. Fire and slaughter were both terrifying powers. They had finally suppressed a 7th-era ancestor god. Both Long Chen and Mo Xiaolang had looks of excitement on their faces. At this time, the nightmare ancestor god, who was suffering from the double blow, fell into a frenzy. All of you must die. Obviously, she didn't care about what the trillions of divine dragons would do if Long Chen died. The life-stealing dragon diagram rushed into Long Chen's body and tore at his flesh like real dragon claws and fangs. The scorching flames stuck to his body from outside. It wasn't easy to get rid of the ancestral flames, especially the eternal sacred flame that burned eternally. 3 lifetimes dreamscape. At this critical juncture, the ancestor god of nightmare unleashed yet another rule. This rule was based on the nightmare realm. The nightmare realm returned to him, transforming into the dream of 3 lifetimes. Its target was none other than Mo Xiaolang. Clearly, she thought that Mo Xiaolang was easier to kill than Long Chen. After all, Mo Xiaolang wasn't a creator god. The 3 lifetimes dreamscape instantly pulled Mo Xiaolang into the giant vortex of nightmares. The huge sun-devouring direwolf immediately reverted to human form. His face was pale, and his eyes had lost their pupils, leaving only the whites of his eyes. He looked extremely weak, like a walking corpse that could collapse at any moment. Big brother, save me. In the midst of his struggle, Mo Xiaolang sent this message to Long Chen. I'm in danger. The 3 lifetimes dreamscape was actually such a terrifying rule. Long Chen knew that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. The 7th era's ancestor god, the nightmare ancestor god, isn't considered strong. As expected, after the doomsday era restored the ancestor gods, they became much stronger. Long Chen understood this, but this wasn't a reason for him to retreat. Today, he bore the hopes of the children, and was here to seek justice for them. The more this was so, the more he couldn't go back with his tail between his legs. Of course, he couldn't let Mo Xiaolang continue to be hurt like this. At this moment, Long Chen gripped the massacre sword in his hand tightly. Suddenly, he transformed into the primordial blood spirit dragon. Naturally, this was the true godly body of the ancestor dragon, which hadn't been revealed even during the doomsday era. The massacre ancestor dragon had returned to the world. The origin of the world, massacre, had fused into the eyes of the primordial blood spirit dragon. Massacre had become his eyes, and this made the primordial blood spirit dragon even more terrifying. In a short period of time, the blood-colored mystical dragon circled around the spider that was still engulfed by the ancestral flame. After circling once, the rule took shape. Blood-devouring Tyrannosaurus dragon sword prison. This was the infuriated massacre rule of the primordial blood spirit dragon. With a heart of fury and the origin of the world of chaos, it could topple everything in its path. Its destructive power was brutal and direct, even more so than the fatal dragon portrait. Of course, this was also the rule that Long Chen had obtained from the primordial blood spirit dragon. Blood-devouring Tyrannosaurus dragon's sword prison. In an instant, as the primordial blood spirit dragon circled in the sky, its eyes focused on the spider. In an instant, billions of swords burst forth from its eyes, forming a hell of swords that rushed towards the nightmare ancestor god in a frenzy. The speed of its slaughter was simply heaven-defying. Especially when the nightmare ancestor god was still under the control of the fatal dragon portrait and the ancestral flame, it was hard for him to dodge. In that instant, the blood-devouring Tyrannosaurus dragon's sword prison pierced through his defenses and flesh. Whoosh! After one round, the nightmare ancestor god's physical body was completely destroyed. She only let out a tragic cry, and all that was left of her was the world origin. Even the world origin had cracks on it under the onslaught of the blood-devouring Tyrannosaurus dragon's sword chi. To anyone, this would be a grievous injury. She was in danger of dying at any moment. With such a grievous injury, firstly, she would definitely not be able to control the rule of 3 lifetimes dreamscape. Long Chen had successfully rescued Mo Xiaolang. Secondly, if she panicked, she would probably spread the news of what had happened here. That would not be beneficial to Long Chen. Therefore, if he wanted to complete his original plan, he had to be quick. Shadow of Death. Long Chen used the Shadow of Death to lock the world origin in darkness, imprisoning everything. At this moment, Long Chen said, "Nightmare Ancestor God, I have a huge gift for you. You have 1,000 years to enjoy it." Long Chen, how dare you injure me? The Ancestor God's alliance will not let you off. The Nightmare Ancestor God was still shouting stubbornly. Do you regret it? If you do, I can consider forgiving you. Long Chen gave this woman one last chance. Chapter 34-44. Since that was the case, there was nothing Long Chen could do about it. He called Lingxi out. Lingxi was already prepared in the death rain. A palm-sized scorpion appeared on her arm. It was twice the size of the previous one and looked even more ferocious. The scorpion passed through the gaps in the death rain and entered the dream heart. It locked onto the ancestor soul and scattered into countless small scorpions, occupying the world origin. What followed next was the nightmare ancestor god's blood-curdling screams. The eternal heart corrosion curse was not a pleasant thing to endure, but from start to finish, this woman deserved it. Even a kind-hearted person like Lingxi couldn't help but want to take revenge on someone who stole her child. From this, it could be seen just how abhorrent it was to steal someone else's child. Not long after, the primordial war ancestor arrived. Seeing that the 7th era's ancestor god had been subdued, he couldn't help but feel that Long Chen had given him too many surprises. Although he didn't say it, he felt that as long as he could grow well in the future, he would naturally have a place in the 10,000 realms. Will the punishment for this curse be too severe? He remembered that Ancestor Dark Knight was the same. It didn't seem easy to endure. If she's willing to repent, she can cancel it at any time. Long Chen wasn't being unreasonable. His main goal was to make the Nightmare Ancestor give up on that idea. Nightmare Ancestor God, you've made a mistake. The Ancestral God's Alliance has decided to punish you with 1,000 years of confinement. I, the Primordial War Ancestor, will carry it out. The Primordial War Ancestor did not give her a chance to grow. He immediately restrained her in a cage that he had prepared beforehand. After he was done, he looked at Long Chen and said earnestly, "This matter has come to an end. No one will cause trouble for you in the future, so you can focus on growing. Try not to get into conflict with the Ancestral God's Alliance. It won't be too late to wait until you become stronger. After all, there are times when I can't protect you." Long Chen understood this. The Primordial War Ancestor was someone who truly cared for him. Don't worry, War Ancestor. I know what I'm doing. I don't offend those who don't offend me. That's good. After chatting for a bit more, like an elder, the steel machine-like Primordial War Ancestor finally left. In any case, if the Nightmare Elder God wanted to wreak havoc again, it would be 1,000 years later. After returning to the Death Realm and the Dragon Sacrificial Continent, Lingxi, Li Xuanji, and the others could finally relax and vent their anger. Of course, they would be more optimistic about these 2 children in the future. Being pregnant for so long in exchange for their birth was not easy for Lingxi and her husband. The days that followed were indeed peaceful. No one provoked Long Chen, and Long Chen would not take the initiative to provoke others. Big brother, given your current level, you wouldn't lose to Elder God Nightmare in a one-on-one fight. The 7th era's Elder God probably wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Mo Xiaolang and Long Chen were together on the dragon sacrificial continent, looking at the vast world below. Long Chen shook his head. The Nightmare Elder God is one of the weaker ones among the 7th era's Elder Gods. I can barely catch up to her, but it doesn't mean that the other 7th era's Elder Gods are the same. Kitten said lazily. That's because you don't know that the ancestor gods of the same epoch are also born at the beginning, middle, and end of an epoch. Of course, because the ancestor gods of the 9th and 8th epochs are too weak, there isn't much of a difference. However, the ancestor gods born in the 7th epoch are gradually different. That nightmare ancestor god was born at the end of the 7th epoch, and the nomological laws he specializes in aren't the direct attack type. That's why he was jointly suppressed by you guys. If it was the 7th epoch's ancestor god born in the middle or beginning of an epoch, Boss only has one world's origin, so he's much weaker in terms of power. Of course, in terms of bloodline and laws, he would surpass the other party. Long Chen said, I see. For example, in the 4th era, the primordial blood spiritual dragon and the other 5 ancestor dragons were born at the beginning of an era. The cursed demon ancestor, the chaos elder god, and the primordial infinite world purifying celestial ancestor were born at the middle of an era, and some were born at the end of an era. Although the difference isn't as big as the difference between the 4th and 5th era's elder gods, there's still a difference. Kitten chuckled. This is also why the ancestor dragons are stronger than the chaos elder gods. In the same era, there's a difference of hundreds of millions of years between their birth times. The earlier they are born, the stronger they are. Back in the day, Lord Cat's peak strength was comparable to the 6th era's elder god who was born at the beginning of an era. I almost had 5 origin of the world. You only have 4 origin of the world. How dare you compare yourself to the void astral dragon? Long Chen laughed. That's because Lord Cat is the strongest destruction elder god. Of course, I have to compete with the strongest creation elder god. After all, both the 1st and 2nd ancestor dragons come and go unpredictably. Kitten had a proud look on his face. Back then, he was also a heroic person. Just a little stupid. The days settled down. About 10 days later, Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight came to visit. He knelt outside the draconic sacrificial continent. He who was suffering from the heart-eroding curse for life, came to beg for Long Chen's forgiveness and a sincere apology. Sacred Ancestor Xueqi, I have no intention of fighting with you. The reason why I made you suffer so badly is to let you know that I have the ability to make you kneel and beg for mercy. Of course, I'll let you go this time, but I don't expect you to go against me. Hold on, I just want to remind you that if you do it again, I might not be able to remove the curse so easily. Long Chen leaned close to his ear and said those words as coldly as water. Don't worry. From now on, I won't even go near the draconic sacrificial continent, Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight said in a trembling voice. The nightmare brought about by the heart-eroding curse was truly too terrifying. The reason why it took more than 10 days to reach the draconic sacrificial continent was because it took him more than 10 days to travel a distance that could normally be covered very quickly. It was a painful and unforgettable journey. Let's go. Long Chen asked Lingxi to remove the curse. Sacred Ancestor Dark Knight didn't say anything else. He stood up and fled in a hurry without looking back. To him, this place was an eternal nightmare that he could never escape. He really didn't dare to come again. The days in the future were even more peaceful. Kitten and Lingxi were condensing new origin of the world in order to reach the 8th era's ancestor god. Although Long Chen's progress was rapid, it wasn't that fast. Therefore, his first task was to find the Void Astral Dragon's world origin and Origin Dragon Soul. The clues were all in the Jiuli Demon territory. These days, Long Chen was also discussing with the dragon attendants. However, because the Qiyu demon ancestor was too terrifying, the dragon attendants didn't have a chance to get close at all, especially when the Qiyu demon ancestor had already set up the immemorial Jiuli demon diagram. I'll go take a look again. Long Chen stood far away from the Jiuli demon territory and looked at the pitch-black, dark red world filled with demonic aura. With the Qiyu demon ancestor around, he couldn't get close at all. It's more likely that the world origin exists. Back then, I only found the location of massacre, because I comprehended the Bloodwheel sword. Now, because of the pool, although I know it's in the Xueqi demon territory, I probably won't be able to find it even if I go in. Therefore, it's very likely that I only have one chance to go in, so I have to be more confident. He was actually thinking whether it was possible that he comprehended a new rule of time that could help him. Back then, he used the Bloodwheel sword to destroy the short mountain and obtained massacre. Rule. Oh right, that pool. Back then, Long Chen had relied on the Sea of Time to comprehend many rule of time. He decided to go to the pool again to take a look. There might be other clues. Just as he was about to set off, he suddenly felt a terrifying feeling behind him. Looking back, he saw the Qiyu demon ancestor, who had a bull's head and two thick arms, surrounded by black and dark red demonic aura. He stared at Long Chen with his dark red eyes and asked, "I'm very curious, what exactly are you looking for?" Long Chen was really shocked. He didn't expect the Qiyu demon ancestor to be able to discover him from such a distance. This was because at this time, Long Chen had even used the shadow of death to protect himself. The fifth era's ancestral god was also this terrifying. Kitten had said that the Qiyu demon ancestor was born at the beginning of the fifth era, or even at the end of the fourth era and the beginning of the fifth era. His ability was one of the strongest among the nearly 100 fifth era's ancestral gods. He was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Long Chen's mind raced, but he couldn't think of a reason. Anyway, whatever he said would obviously be a lie, so he didn't say anything and directly said, "Greetings, demon ancestor." The Qiyu demon ancestor came forward and stared into his eyes. A terrifying pressure pressed down on Long Chen's body. He continued to ask, "Let me ask you, what do you want to find in my Xueqi demon territory?" Long Chen thought about it and said, "It's my personal thing. I don't just look at it in the Xueqi demon territory. I see it in other worlds. After all, it's my personal thing, so it's not convenient to tell the demon ancestor." Normally, even the 7th era's ancestral god would tremble under the pressure of the Qiyu demon ancestor. It was already very good that Long Chen could answer so calmly. "In that case, I don't want to see you around the Xueqi demon territory. Otherwise, I might not be polite. I don't have a good temper. Even if you let me live, I can't control myself when I'm angry." Understood. The Qiyu demon ancestor's words were very firm. It was an accident that he was discovered so easily today. With the current situation, he definitely couldn't stay here. Therefore, after Long Chen opened the Death Realm Dragon Gate and bid farewell to the Qiyu demon ancestor, he directly left. In fact, he was about to leave, but he was just one step away. After Long Chen left, the Qiyu demon ancestor stood at this position and looked at the Xueqi demon territory. He is the ancestral dragon's descendant. What he wants is probably the thing left behind by the dragon sacrificial continent. I want to see if there's anything in my world that I can't find. Chapter 34-45. He was very familiar with every blade of grass and tree in the Xueqi demon region. Every world was vast and boundless to all living beings. But to the ancestor gods, it was equivalent to a house or even a wooden house that they had built themselves. Because they had built it themselves, they were very familiar with the materials. If not for the fact that they had lost their memories, even a foreign butterfly would not be able to escape their eyes. Demon ancestor Qiyu put aside perfecting the ancient Xueqi demon diagram and focused on searching in the Xueqi demon region. Long Chen did not expect him to be searching as well. He focused on the palm-sized pool of water beneath his feet, which had an infinite amount of time within it. Long Chen did not dare to move the pool, fearing that he would ruin the clues. "Did you find anything?" asked the primeval dragon servant. The 6 dragon servants had been guarding the pool. "I need time," replied Long Chen. "All right, we will not disturb you. The clue to the Void Infinity Dragon is here. You will have to rely on yourself from now on. The few of us will go look for new clues. I'll have to trouble you all." Long Chen was extremely respectful towards these elders. "This is not trouble, but the meaning of our lives." The slaughter dragon's servant patted him on the shoulder and smiled. This guy who looked exactly like him left with the other dragon servants. Long Chen calmed down and focused on the changes of time in the pool, as well as the rules of time that were reflected within. The surroundings were extremely quiet. He was very focused. He placed his palm on the surface of the pool to feel the hundreds of millions of different changes in time. It was not just fast or slow, but also contained many unimaginable changes, such as stillness, counterflow, and so on. To put it simply, this pool of water was formed by countless water particles, and the flow of time was completely messed up, forming extremely small fragments that attached themselves to the water particles. The particles of time. Long Chen suddenly had this thought. Everything was made up of extremely small particles. Then why was time not the same? Time was like the driving force for any object to change, like a kind of power. The thoughts in his mind kept changing. Following the rhythm of time in his palm, a new door that belonged to time slowly opened in front of him. This was a profound hall that belonged to the true controller of time. The palace wasn't very big, but there were trillions of time particles. Long Chen had always been able to control large chunks of time, but he had never imagined that time could be so small. A vast world appeared in front of him, filled with what looked like countless pearls. Each and every one of those pearls was a beautiful particle of time, only magnified countless times over. Of course, it was actually Long Chen's thoughts that had become smaller. He plucked it off. The moment it was closest to him, he felt a warm feeling in his palm. It's because of your transformation that the fixed infinite worlds have started to move. Long Chen was very clear about this. If there was no time, the infinite world should be still, like a lonely voice. The beginning of the infinite worlds might have originated from the appearance of time. Of course, the Void Infinity Dragon was the controller of time and was born in the third epoch, not the creator of time. With the concept of an epoch, there was already time. The time particle in his hand allowed Long Chen to wander in the most minute world of time. As he immersed himself in it, he didn't know how much time had passed in the outside world. Even when he arrived, he became smaller than the time particle so that he could see the particles more clearly. This time, my good fortune isn't as simple as a nomological law. Instead, it has brought me into a new realm of time. He could completely believe that this tiny pool had been left behind by the Void Infinity Dragon during the battle before the third epoch. Its purpose was, of course, to guide the inheritor to find everything he had left behind. From the initial excitement, he finally calmed down. Even with what he had seen today, Long Chen had a new understanding. The first nomological law he had comprehended was formed by the disorder of time. Now, this nomological law had undergone a new change in Long Chen's eyes. The most fundamental aspect of the disorder of time was the violent changes in the time particles. But at that time, what Long Chen had done was to divide time into a few, a dozen, or even hundreds of parts to disorder. Now, he knew that the time particles could produce hundreds of millions of types of disorder in a space as small as a palm. That was the true disintegration of the very essence of the Tao. This pool was the disorder of the time particles. Long Chen could learn the subtle changes of this new nomological law in this pool. Of course, the time particles in the pool changed gently, but what Long Chen wanted was a kind of violent anger of time. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Every particle of time was an angry flame. They trembled violently in Long Chen's hands. In Long Chen's hands, an incorporeal, dark blue little dragon was born. It rolled and roared in Long Chen's hands. It was a small thing, but the sound of its body trembling was very loud. This was a new nomological law. It was built on the particles of time. If every particle was enlarged to the size of a pearl, then this thumb-sized little dragon would be the size of the ancient blood spirit dragon. Although this little dragon was small, it was actually like a pool of water. Hidden within it were the most chaotic particles of time that contained hundreds of millions of variations of time. This was a little dragon with great destructive power. Of course, in fact, Long Chen could transform it into anything. For example, a tree, a flower, a river. But he still liked the appearance of this incorporeal little dragon the most. It was exactly the same as the Void Infinity Dragon. As for this nomological law, it did not have a name from the inheritance, so Long Chen gave it a name, the Dragon of Time. It was very simple, but also very appropriate. Although this Dragon of Time is small, its power is immeasurable. In this regard, Long Chen was certainly very confident. This time, his efforts could be considered to have yielded great results. He stood on this barren giant planet and looked at the changes in the nomological law in his hands. Then, he looked at the pool under his feet. Long Chen extended his hand and let the little dragon enter the pool. The finger-sized little dragon swam happily in the pool. Of course, it was actually two kinds of chaotic time colliding. With a soft sound, as if Long Chen had activated a mechanism, the water in the pool suddenly exploded and fused with the little dragon. Then, it quickly condensed into a meandering river in front of Long Chen. This river had a total of 18 bends. It was like a water snake. Long Chen only took a glance at it and naturally remembered it deeply. Moreover, he remembered every detail of it. A river with 18 turns could be found everywhere, but the details, the angle of each turn, and the length had its own characteristics. In this infinite world, it was impossible for there to be two of them. This is the real hint given to me by the Void Aeon Dragon. It is very likely that this river in the Xueqi demon territory is the origin of the Void Aeon Dragon's world, time. The reason why he was so sure was that, firstly, the pool and the Dragon of Time gave him this intuition. Secondly, when Long Chen discovered the massacre, he was still a short mountain. Wasn't a short mountain and a river very similar? Therefore, the possibility was quite high. The river only appeared for a moment before the pool and the Dragon of Time separated. The Dragon of Time wrapped around Long Chen's wrist, and the water in the pool fell down. Most of it did not return to the pool, but sank into the giant planet's soil. Soon, it would dry up and disappear. This was very ordinary water, but it had been disrupted by the Void Aeon Dragon's nomological law of time for hundreds of millions of years. Now that its mission was over, it naturally disappeared, and Long Chen had obtained everything he wanted to know. This river must exist in the Xueqi demon territory. Long Chen was basically certain. However, the Qiyu demon ancestor was not easy to deal with. He had not been to the Xueqi demon territory for some time. Long Chen thought, if I want to obtain time, I will have to pay a visit sooner or later. However, the Qiyu demon ancestor's attitude towards him was not very good. Therefore, he thought of the primordial war ancestor. If the primordial war ancestor is willing to help me snatch time from the Xueqi demon territory, first, this will trouble the primordial war ancestor. He is a member of the Ancestral Gods Alliance, and this action will make him deviate from the rules of the Ancestral Gods Alliance. It will add to his troubles. Second, if the Qiyu demon ancestor is angry, he will also target me in the future. Third, I can't always rely on the primordial war ancestor. From this point of view, he felt that he should not seek the primordial war ancestor's help. Finding the ancestral dragon's inheritance was his own business, and he could not completely blame it on the primordial war ancestor. The Qiyu demon ancestor is a proud person. Even if the primordial war ancestor is stronger than him, even if he directly gives time to me because of his pride, it will not be good for the primordial war ancestor's reputation. After thinking about it, Long Chen still felt that he could not rely on others for this kind of thing, especially when he had not tried it himself. This is a divine item that is above primal chaos treasures. It was born at the beginning of the world, even before I was born. It was probably born in the third epoch. Long Chen was shocked. He asked, how can such an item still exist in the 10,000 worlds? The Qiyu fiend ancestor saw that he was ignorant and smirked. He said, that's because you don't know. The instant magic stone is very small. It's only the size of a thumb. Moreover, it has the power of time and space. It can change its position in space at any moment and is constantly flickering. The longest it can stay in one place is not more than 15 minutes. Of course, most of the time, it changes its position in an instant and never stops. Since you don't know of its existence, it is naturally hard for you to see it. Long Chen really did not expect such a mystical item to exist in the 10,000 worlds. I can catch such an item. It's not difficult. I'm just too lazy to look for it. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the luck to see it. Logically, Long Chen had the power to control time. Compared to anyone else, it would be easier for him to snatch the instant magic stone. Alright, I understand. For the source of the world time, He had to listen to the Qiyu fiend ancestor. He had to find the instant magic stone for him, even though he had no clue. Actually, the instant magic stone doesn't teleport very far. Sometimes, it will stay in one place for a long time. 2 hours before you came, I received news that it appeared near the Eastern Star Region's Sea of Sky Demon, the Qiyu fiend ancestor said. Long Chen was very familiar with the Sea of Sky Demon. Back then, he had passed through the Sea of Sky Demon to find the 6 paths of reincarnation realm. At least he knew where it was. Long Chen relaxed a little. It seemed like the Qiyu fiend ancestor was not making things difficult for him. He should have a way to get it. As long as I get this instant magic stone, I will be able to obtain time. The source of the world of the void Ian dragon naturally made Long Chen excited. Fiend ancestor, I will set off now. Long Chen was ready. Wait. The Qiyu fiend ancestor stopped him and said, I have something to tell you. Please speak. Previously, many 7th, 8th, and 9th era ancestral gods came to seek my protection. They wanted to become my subordinates and receive my protection. I promised them that whoever obtained the instant magic stone and gave it to me would become my brother. Therefore, you might have many competitors this time. Of course, if the instant magic stone is obtained by others, I might not let you enter to take your item. Long Chen knew that it would not be as easy as he imagined. There were actually competitors. As for those ancestral gods seeking protection, Long Chen could understand. Now that the 10,000 worlds had entered a new era, the ancestral gods were all isolated. Naturally, they had to form their own factions. It was normal for the weaker ancestral gods to seek protection from the strong in order to protect themselves. For example, Long Chen would ask the primordial war ancestor for help. Just like in the mortal world, ordinary small countries would choose to become subordinates of large countries to ensure their own safety. They might even be able to intimidate others. If anyone could become the brother of the Qiyu fiend ancestor, at least those weaker than him would not dare to bully him. Otherwise, it would be a disgrace to the Qiyu fiend ancestor. No problem. Long Chen was very clear that although the Qiyu fiend ancestor had agreed, he had also given Long Chen many problems. However, this was also good. At least after obtaining time, he would not be too grateful to the Qiyu fiend ancestor because it was an equal exchange. This would save him the trouble of doing things that he did not like in the future. Only then did Long Chen leave the Jiuli demon region and return to the Death Rain. Although the ancestral gods were all searching for the instant demon stone and were racing against time, Long Chen still discussed this matter with everyone. Actually, this outcome is already very good. With the Qiyu fiend ancestor's status, he will not act recklessly. At least as long as Big Brother obtains the instant demon stone, he will definitely be able to obtain time. That's right. Big Brother also has the advantage in terms of time. Since everyone felt that there were no major problems, Long Chen made some preparations before setting off alone. Of course, if he was in a dangerous situation, the Lingxi and the rest would be between the Death Rain and the Dragon Sacrificial Continent. They could help at any time. Not long after, Long Chen arrived near the Sky Demon Sea. Instant Demon Stone. Time. Space. Looking at the vast star domain, it was really not easy to find a thumb-sized stone that changed shape at any time in this huge world. The moment he arrived, Long Chen knew the difficulty of this mission. Where is it? If he continued forward, he would reach the Sky Demon Sea. The Sky Demon Sea was the same as the Purgatory Sun in the past. Of course, to Long Chen and the rest, it was just a very ordinary pool. It did not pose any threat. Long Chen remained here. His perception of time was like a thread that extended towards the surrounding space. In this endless space, he was able to capture a different time. Since the instant demon stone contains the power of time, the fluctuations of time will definitely be different from the surroundings. This was the only way for Long Chen to find it. About 2 hours later, he did not find the instant demon stone. Instead, he met 2 familiar people. One was the limitless old ancestor, and the other was the ancient wood sacred ancestor. They were both Long Chen's old friends. They were the ancestor gods of the 9th era. In the myriad worlds, they were much more superior than ordinary gods and demons. They were the lords of creation, but among the ancestor gods, they were the lowest. Ever since the ancestor gods returned, they had been keeping a low profile. Apart from the two of them, there were a few other ancestor gods. They were all ancestor gods of the 9th era. A total of 7 gathered together. When they came out of the Sky Demon Sea, they saw Long Chen. Long Chen, why are you here? Are you also here to find the instant demon stone? The ancient wood sacred ancestor and the limitless old ancestor came forward alone. The others were not familiar with Long Chen. They were slightly wary and watched from afar. Long Chen nodded and said, "What about the rest of you?" The ancient wood sacred ancestor and the limitless old ancestor looked at each other. The limitless old ancestor said, "We also heard that demon ancestor Qiyu said that whoever gets the instant demon stone and gives it to him will be able to follow him and receive his protection. They might even become his friends. Therefore, we are all here to try our luck. After all, we are the lowest of the ancestor gods. Who doesn't want an expert to protect them?" The limitless old ancestor was rather helpless. Chapter 34-47. Beside him, sacred ancestor Ancient Wood said, "That's strange. Long Chen, don't you have the help of the primordial war ancestor? I heard that you were fighting against the Ancestor God Alliance, but no one from the Ancestor God Alliance touched you. You saved 10,000 worlds, and your contributions are great. There are many ancestor gods protecting you. Why are you fighting with us for the instant magic stone?" She worshipped Long Chen. In her eyes, Long Chen was a high and mighty figure. Long Chen could only say, "To tell you the truth, I want to obtain something else from the Qiyu demon ancestor. He wants me to use the instant magic stone to exchange for it. However, I hope that the two of you can help me keep this a secret. Just let my goal be the same as yours." The two ancestor gods looked at each other. They did not think much of it. Patriarch Infinity said, "Don't worry, you can search without worry. We are just here to join in the fun. We won't get it. If that thing of yours is important, and we accidentally get it, we will definitely give it to you." Hearing this, Long Chen was very touched. He said, "If that's the case, Long Chen will not forget today's kindness." Sacred ancestor Ancient Wood said, "Don't say that. We all know how we survived the Doomsday War. Anyway, you are our benefactor, and I will not be ungrateful. But there's no point in saying so much. The chances of us getting it are too low. It's said that even the 6th era ancestor gods are joining the search. I even saw a few 7th era ancestor gods. You will be under a lot of pressure. There are so many people, and there are even 6th era ancestor gods." Indeed, Long Chen felt the pressure. But this could not make him give up. On the other side, the remaining ancestor gods were already telling them to leave. "These are our new friends from the nearby worlds. However, they don't seem to be very grateful to you," the boundless old ancestor introduced. Seeing so many of them in a group, Long Chen asked, "That's strange. There are so many of you in a group. Once you see the instant magic stone, won't you have to fight each other for it? You might as well act alone." "You don't know." Sacred ancestor Ancient Wood was shocked. She said, "It's like this. The Qiyu demon ancestor allowed us to form teams. He said that a team can only have 10 people at most. If one of us gets the instant magic stone and gives it to him, we will all be under his protection. That's why most of us formed teams this time. There are even teams from the 7th era's ancestral god. So that was how it was. Why don't you join us?" Sacred ancestor Ancient Wood asked. The boundless old ancestor said, "He can't. He and the Qiyu demon ancestor made a separate agreement. It's different from ours, even though they are competing for the same thing." That was true. The people on the other side urged the Ancient Wood sacred ancestor and the others to leave. Long Chen told them to return first, and the group of ancestor gods left. After encountering the Ancient Wood sacred ancestor and the others, Long Chen learned one thing. Enemies usually came in groups. A group of people looking for the same thing was of course much more likely than a single person looking for it. Whatever. Let's keep searching. A single person like Long Chen was definitely more useful than a group. He used the power of time to search, and this time, he had made huge improvements. As he searched, he changed locations. Before long, he left the Sky Demon Sea. Soon, Long Chen discovered that it depended on luck. It depended on who the instant magic stone would suddenly appear around. Within a few days, Long Chen encountered several teams. Most of them were from the 8th era's ancestral god. They formed teams. Although the 9th era's ancestral god had the most numbers, most of them were there to join in the fun. There were also many ancestral gods from the 7th era. Basically, Long Chen did not approach them. He searched alone. It seems that the temptation of the Qi demon ancestors' protection is quite great. The number of people in the vicinity increased. Ever since he arrived, Long Chen had not heard any news of the instant magic stone appearing. Perhaps it has already run off to another place. Long Chen yearned for time. Therefore, he was very anxious about the instant magic stone. He had not heard any news, and he felt very uneasy. If someone else got it first, it would be troublesome. As he pondered, Long Chen was too engrossed. All his attention was focused on the changes in time. He sat on a fragmentary star and moved with it. He did not notice that a team was approaching him. Only when they got close did Long Chen open his eyes. By this point, the group of people were already very close to him. They had discovered Long Chen, and had come over to meet him. Long Chen took a closer look and saw that there were a total of 7 people. 5 of them were elder gods from the 8th era, while the other 2 were elder gods from the 7th era. This was the strongest group of people Long Chen had seen in recent times. The 2 7th era ancestral gods were at the front of the team. One of them was tall and burly. His skin was gray, not made of rock, but like frozen dried meat. There were several deep scars on his body, even on his face. Under those scars, one could vaguely see that there were raging flames and lava. His eyes were dry and scorching. Everywhere he looked, there was a fiery feeling. Although he did not have an ancestral flame, in terms of strength, he completely surpassed Mo Xiaolang. The other was a cute young lady. She was very cute, with big eyes and canine teeth. She had snow-white hair that was as soft as a fox's. She was an ancestral god of the demon race, but her original form was not a white fox. She looked more like Mo Xiaolang, but she was not a wolf either. If Long Chen was not wrong, she should be a dog. The pure white dog always had a smile on her face. She was sober and charming, and her eyes were intelligent. She looked at Long Chen curiously. There were many unsettled factors in her eyes. She was like a child, making Long Chen feel like he was looking at a dragon. However, this was the 7th era ancestral god. There were more than 10,000 ancestral gods. Long Chen actually knew almost all of them. The man on the left was the ancestral god of the Western Star region. His primordial chaos realm world was the raging inferno star ocean. It was a star region covered in flames all day long. Endless flames filled the starry sky. This ancestral god was also very famous. He was Sacred Ancestor Drought Demon. Legend had it that wherever he went, not even a blade of grass would grow. He was also one of the progenitors of flames in the myriad worlds. The other had nothing to do with Sacred Ancestor Drought Demon. There was a primordial chaos realm in the eastern star region called the Warhounds realm. It was filled with dog-type monsters that were even larger than the ravenous wolf star ocean. This cute, white-haired, furry girl was the ancestral god of the Warhounds realm, the Satsuma demonic ancestor. Her original form was the Satsuma demonic dog, the ruler of the Warhounds realm. In truth, the Satsuma demonic ancestor was extremely powerful. If one was deceived by her cute appearance, it would be dangerous. The Nightmare Ancestral God was born at the end of the 7th era. He is the weakest of the 7th era's ancestral gods. These two were born in the middle of the 7th era, and they both specialize in offensive laws. They are much harder to deal with than the Nightmare Ancestral God. If they attack together, I don't have much chance of winning. Long Chen only had one origin of the world, while they had 3. The huge gap in strength reduced the possibility of him creating a miracle. On the other hand, the 8th era's ancestral god was no match for him at all. Therefore, facing this team of 7, Long Chen was very cautious. Unexpectedly at this moment, the cute Satsuma demonic ancestor saw Long Chen and immediately smiled brilliantly. She ran towards Long Chen like a wisp of smoke and exclaimed in a love-struck tone, "Long Chen, is it really you, Long Chen?" She was too enthusiastic. From her crystal-clear eyes, there was not the slightest bit of evil, only deep worship. This left Long Chen dumbfounded. What was this Satsuma demonic ancestor trying to do? She was born in the 7th era and was his elder's elder. You can call me you. You saved me twice during the apocalypse. The first time was when you led the team to the center of the apocalypse. I almost died. It was you and Miss Lingxi who brought me back to life and woke me up. Later, it was you who killed the black-robed man and saved my life. That time, I almost died as well. So, you are my savior. Long Chen stood up and saw that the Satsuma demon ancestor was already standing in front of him. She almost stopped and said, I finally see you alone. Do you know me? I'm the Satsuma demon ancestor, but I think this name is too ugly, so I gave myself a nicer name, Luiwe. You can call me Yu. You don't know me? You do. During the apocalypse you saved me twice. The first time was when you led the team to the center of the apocalypse. That time, I almost lost my life as well, so you're my savior. She rambled on and finally said everything she needed to say. When she was done, she looked at Long Chen expectantly. To be honest, that love-struck expression really scared Long Chen. Among the primordial gods, he had never seen such enthusiasm. However, he had saved too many people that day. In the end, it was a team of thousands that went to the core of the doomsday, so he didn't have a deep impression of her, but he was sure that she was right.